want to make it legal that they're in there. We've had one in our. Everybody came out against that particular college, Arizona School of Nursing.
Why?
We have so many fly-by-night universities in this area that come in, tell the black population that they're going to do good by them, and then they run away with their money and give them no education.
They just invested $2 million.
Yeah,
Okay. Are we on? We're on. I'd like to call this meeting to order, a regular meeting of the Plan Commission on Monday, February 12th at 6:30 PM in the Germantown Village Hall Boardroom. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. All Plan Commissioner members are present. At this time, next item on the agenda would be the approval of minutes. There are two meeting minutes listed on tonight's agenda, the January 8th, 2024 meeting minutes and the January 22nd, 2024 Plan Commission meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve both A and B, the 8th and the 22nd.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve? Mr. Williams?
Abstained since I was present for the last 2 meetings.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed and one abstain. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda starts with new business, starting with new business item A review residential market analysis and strategy planning report by Tracy Cross and Associates on tonight's agenda for discussion. Give us more information background on this new business item A. We'll turn the meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzlaff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since this is our first meeting since the joint meeting between the Plan Commission and the Economic Development Commission on January 22nd, I wanted to put this on the agenda to sort of kick off the conversation. I know that we could easily spend a couple hours on this item alone. Don't worry. That's not my intention. It's simply to try and get whatever questions that you might have concerning the study out. We can talk about them briefly, but then make note of those. And if there's something in particular that we need to get back to the author on the report, Eric, we can do so in the meantime. I don't know if we are going to have a special meeting to discuss this or just dedicate half a meeting next month, because at this point we don't have too heavy of a schedule. But we can talk about that a little bit later. So with that, I did download a couple of images from the report just to maybe generate some conversation. But with that on the screen, I'll just open it up for any comments that the Plan Commission members might have. If you recall, our meeting time was cut short. We had some technical difficulties, and we had another meeting coming up behind us, so we didn't have a whole lot of time to ask, much less respond and discuss any questions that you had then. So with that, I would open it up for any conversation or questions that you might have.
Mr. Leshesky?
One question, it's at the bottom of page 3. And it says, it's the last 3 words at the bottom of page 3, at least in the text. It says, and possibly some form of incentives in order to substantially reduce costs. Do you know what incentives? I mean, I think it's discussed in a couple places in here, and I think this is the first place where it talks about. I'm just curious what he was talking about there. Are they?
If you would turn to page 1.10 in the report, if you happen to have it with you, there's a section that he added to the report that reads other considerations. It's at the top.
Oh.
Even with a disciplined planning and design approach, it is possible that some incentives or concessions from the municipality might also be necessary to bring the for sale products to market, especially in larger scale communities. I think he means like neighborhoods, developments. Well, this will need to be determined through the planning process. It should be given due consideration. For the rental products, it is unlikely that incentives, concessions would be required at the benchmark rates that he's recommending for the certain product types in those tables 1 through 7, which I do have on slides if you want to go over those. as they are more consistent with the newer market comparables. Although rising construction costs may also require some assistance in this regard. Examples of the types of incentives being utilized by other municipalities to bring the gap between costs and needed housing price include tax increment financing and/or land subsidies or land subordination. In other words, reducing the cost of land or eliminating the cost whatsoever. In some communities, they're buying land and they're turning it around to developers based on an agreeable development agreement and plan for low or no cost. Also, it is important to note that when considering parcels for the introduction of properly priced mainstream housing throughout the village, vacant sites typically represent a stronger alternative as there are added costs associated with redevelopment sites, including demolition and debris. I think this last statement is more to the comment that was raised concerning redevelopment. Jolene Pieper, Trustee Pieper, Chairman of the Economic Development Commission, asked a question about redevelopment in particular parts of the village, and she gave a couple of specific examples. And the answer is that these recommendations would still hold. It's just that to do it on those particular sites where there's already, development that exists, it would take the fortitude and the cost to have that redeveloped, whether the current owner chooses to do that for some reason or somebody buys the property and does that for them. So that was his attempt at trying to address that redevelopment type question. Other incentives, frankly, talked about throughout the report include the community making changes, not only in developing their plans, whether it be a comprehensive plan or neighborhood plans like we are, where we specifically plan for certain types of housing, but also, and maybe more importantly, to change your development codes, to make those accommodations that would provide for the types of recommended housing products that he has in his report. I mean, the easiest example of that is the number 7. I'm going to click through that real quick. 1.7 in the report is the for sale single family product that's more akin to the typical type of development we see on a single family subdivision. If you'll note, we're talking about lot dimensions, 60 by 120. I mean, that's 7,200 square feet. We currently don't have a zoning district, a general zoning district in our code that accommodates a lot size of 7,200 square feet. The smallest lot size we have that is allowed under our zoning code is the RS7, which has a 10,000 square foot minimum.
So the term of incentive here isn't necessarily monetary, but it could be an inducement through a code change or zoning change. Is that
Yes.
to paraphrase?
Incentive or consideration. For example, what we've done in the past with some developments where the existing zoning code structure didn't quite match up with what they preferred for their particular development. We developed a planned development district and took the underlying or base zoning district and we made some modifications. Renwood is a good example. The underlying zoning is RS5, single family, which has a 15,000 square foot lot size. And there we revised that minimum down to 12,500 square feet as a minimum lot size for that particular planned development district. So we created a new zoning district on the back of an RS5 district for the Renwood project.
Mm-hmm.
Did we not also allow the quad attached housing? Is that Renwood or is that?
That's Renwood.
That's
We
Renwood.
did that too. And we made some other, in fact, there was a request to make an even further concession on the lot width requirement in Renwood, and the village rejected that request by the developer. So there's some give and take on that sort of thing.
Terry Tito.
How much of this, I guess, between the townhomes and the apartments and single family residential, is there a threshold we are expected or supposed to hit or accept or build out or approve? Is there limits to that? Like, we just said no altogether to everything. Is there, I mean, it's coming from a,
Well, I would say this, no, there's no requirement from some higher authority requiring us to provide for the type of housing that's recommended in this particular report. Our own 2050 plan, however, does talk about providing for, in more generalities, policies that were adopted in the plan. Specifically, read as follows. The housing goal: nurture existing neighborhoods and develop a variety of new housing types that are accessible and welcoming to a diversity of residents. New housing should contribute to Germantown's community character and build on the village's assets. One interpretation that is we protect our existing neighborhoods. If there are vacant developable properties in and around there, infill parcels, if you will, we only allow development that is the equivalent of what's around it. And we've heard that consistently when new developments come in adjacent to existing subdivisions. So with respect to the contributing to Germantown's character and build on the village's assets, clearly infill is one of the things that we need to focus on, where the infrastructure already exists and where we can fill in those vacant properties with development that's consistent with its surrounding and abutting it. Doesn't mean we don't have greenfield development that could develop. And that's one of the areas where, I think the focus for at least staff has been, there are certain areas of the village, for example, the Freistadt district. It's bounded by the railroad to the north, Highway 41 to the west, and Goldendale Road to the east, and Freistadt to the south. And the only nearby abutting neighborhood, realistically speaking, is to the east along Goldendale. And the plan in the concept plan in the 2050 plan sort of calls for a buffer along Goldendale, but pretty much that area right along Highway 41, south of the railroad, we've talked in the concept of allowing a higher density residential development, where a product like any one of the ones that he's recommending in the report, he suggests could locate in that vicinity and satisfy the demand with housing that can be afforded by those who work in the village or live here that have an income in between that. What was it? 45,000 to 125,000, 150,000. The 50% of the median income to 150% of the median income. So no, there's nobody saying you have to do this. I mean, my takeaway is that if you follow his Tracy Cross, Eric is the author of the report, their recommendations, there's demand out there for a significant number of housing units that could be satisfied by these types of for rent or for sale units. And he gives very specific guidelines in those tables, the 1.1 to 1.7, as the sort of recipe for how to do it in a way that can satisfy that existing demand. But he also says that if you want to continue developing the same old, single family homes on large lots, you can certainly choose to do that and go that route. It's just that he points out the disadvantages of that in terms of you're only going to grow, a relatively small amount each year over the course of the next 5 years. I think his projection was essentially right around that 12 unit to 40 unit mark, which is pretty accurate for what we've experienced the last couple of years.
no, I understand. I mean, that makes sense what you're saying. Appreciate that. I just, are the numbers that they put together in terms of a single family residential unit that's gonna land in the 400 range. I mean, today, is that real? Is that I mean, is there a local builder around that's, I mean, you don't really see anything on the market that, at that price point. So I just,
Well, I think that's in part where the recommendation that it may take combination of things on the government side to free up the market, so to speak, so that there is a developer who'll step in and make that product. And you can see that that's what's happening with Washington County and their next generation housing program. There's money that's been made available to, I'll use the word subsidize the cost of $20,000 per home site that's created, along with other monies that are being spent to help with the planning and the design and the construction costs of small neighborhoods that support housing with a range that's in the range that's affordable for the people with the income that ranges between the 50 and 100% of the median income in Washington County. Now, this table on the screen is from the executive summary. I think it's very telling that on the left columns, the price range, that's basically not just price range, but income range. The middle column's annual for sale housing demand based upon current incomes. So the for sale housing price points required to satisfy the incomes that are out there are that $250,000 to $450,000 range. But then when you look on the far right columns, the actual qualitative distribution of new construction and residential closings, actual closings, the price range of the units that are closing are in that $400,000 to $700,000 range and above. So product that's out there that's being built is that very expensive, relatively expensive, home product. But the demand can't afford it. The people that don't make those incomes to afford it unless they're going to succumb to the sort of the housing cost burden, if you will, to pay more than your 30% of your income for your housing cost.
well, I know it's the wrong county, but in Ozaki County, there's kind of this going on off of, used to be a golf course or like a driving range, or by their fairgrounds. But I drove through there the other day and the houses are on 10 to 11,000 square foot lots. So about a quarter acre, 1,900 to 2,000 square foot, 2 stories, just stacked.
Side by side, connected on small lots.
640 grand for the single families, 470 for the side by sides at 1,900 square feet. So I'm just saying, the report, obviously they put a lot of time into it and it's got a value, but where the report's saying that's a $390,000 house, the side by side, it's a $470,000 house. So I don't know what's actually able to be built for those dollars until, a builder comes in and proposes something,
Right. I mean, it is a good question. And the government, we could only go so far in terms of our own regulations. I mean, we don't control the cost of materials.
Right.
And that's certainly a significant portion of housing costs, interest rates, all that sort of stuff. And we do have some impact on land price by way of our regulations, and we can take a look at those. But short of having specific developers that we talk with and can exchange ideas about, who's to say what in fact product we would get proposed, even if we did lower our zoning requirements in one or more zoning districts to accommodate 7,000 square foot lots.
Trustee Baum,
And in response to that, I know some of those developers, those home builders, and they focus on a step up home buyer. They're not focused on the entry level home buyer. So right there, they're not even targeting this market. So the development that you're talking about, we look at the developments that are coming up in our neighborhoods. They're not targeting this category. We need to find contractors, developers, builders who focus on this segment. I hear it more up in the Appleton Valley, that they're doing it up there. But this close to Milwaukee, I haven't heard anybody targeting that sector recently.
Yeah, and I would say the subdivision Cedarburg probably closer matches a Renwood, but I mean, they're a smaller lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, those houses, when you drive down the road, you can't see daylight between them.
No.
I mean, it looks like just one huge building. So I mean, I
And-
can't imagine having a 7,000 square foot lot
And the,
instead of a 10.
the amenities inside the house are not entry level. You got dual sink master suites,
Sure.
which do you need two sinks when you're just starting out? You can have a
Yeah,
master suite, but have one sink, one toilet and one ensuite. Those are the things you have to back down to get into these
Yeah.
lower areas. We're not doing granite countertops. We're doing plastic laminates, maybe a solid surface if we stretch it. We don't have the built-in bookcases. We don't have the built-in fireplaces.
sure. Well, for whatever it's worth, that's all I had on that.
And one of the things we gave Tracy Cross was a list of 12 sites in the village. They're up on the screen that have the potential for future development, redevelopment. And we asked him to take a look at those. And, when you read the report, he's basically saying is, at least my interpretation is that any of these sites could accommodate any of the types of for rent or for sale units that he's recommending in his range, or that 50 to 150% of the median income, because the demand is so great. Not just, in the village, our village, but in the market area that he identified, that larger area that goes beyond Germantown, all of Washington County and some of Waukesha and Ozaki counties. So when we start looking at future development proposals, I think we need to look at them. We certainly can look at them in light of this type of information. Typically, it hasn't come up often, but many times we'll get a proposal and one of the questions comes up because there's some skepticism as to whether or not that particular product might be successful or not. The question is, well, do you have a market study? Well, we've gone out and we've got one that's, pretty comprehensive, that should hold for a few years, I would think, that we can turn to with some fairly reasonable information and projections, that we could, rely on and not just necessarily discount a proposal because we don't think it'll be successful in the village from a market perspective.
Trustee Baum.
So I've gotten emails that people are dissatisfied with this report. It is not comprehensive enough. It doesn't tell us what to develop where. What was the direction that was given to these guys? Because I think there's a different understanding or expectation.
Yeah, in the cover sheet of this, the staff packet, I pulled out the objectives from the agreement between Washington County, the village, and Tracy Cross. And the objectives of the residential market analysis, were as follows: to determine the depth of the market for residential development in the village of Germantown over the next 5 to 10 years. The evaluation to be based upon economic, demographic, socioeconomic, and residential construction trends throughout the area. 2, to forward conclusions regarding the marketability of various forms of housing throughout the village in order to meet the needs, demands of the area residents, current and future, fill voids that exist in the marketplace and address future growth initiatives. Investigative uses, including but not limited to single-family, duplex, villa, townhome, condominium, for sale offerings, as well as various rental housing forms, focusing upon all age groups and income categories, ranging from younger profiles through active adults age 55 and over. The conclusions are based upon the depth of the market in each residential sector and or consumer segment and the alignment of residential developments existing and planned. 3, to offer specific design, product, and principle, our pricing, rental rate recommendations for those housing forms that are viewed to have measurable market support now and into the future, including market rate alternatives as well as other workforce and affordable options. These recommendations address total unit count potentials, product criteria, plan types and sizes, unit mix, parking requirements, et cetera, along with a benchmark pricing rental rate guidelines that are necessary to attain acceptable levels of absorption. And 4, to offer a geographic positioning strategy for the introduction of new housing products throughout the village, focusing on these areas viewed most suitable for the recommended housing forms over the next 5 to 10 years. And that's that last one is the whole geographic bent to it. And that's what we wanted. We wanted him to take a look at those areas. And the response was essentially, there's enough demand out there. You could do any of these products in any of these locations with some further manipulation. He talks about maybe focusing the for rent type product closer to Highway 41 and those properties that are identified on the map that are closer, and that those properties that are more toward the center or eastern part of the village, closer to existing residential subdivisions, to be more focused on the for sale single family product. That's what I take away from my reading on that.
So it wasn't really intended to cast a vision for the village. Its intent was to provide us data that we can use in producing our own vision for the village.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, you can use this in multiple ways. I mean, you can use it as a guide to, if the community, and this is probably where we need to go with this, and talk more about residential development strategy and policy, if you will, going forward. You know, if you want to meet the demand for housing in our market area, and provide housing that people in that range can afford, then these are the products that he's recommending will be successful.
Right.
I mean, you can also use it as a tool to restrict development if you want, frankly. You could say, well, okay, now we know what's going to be successful here. And if we don't really want to grow, then let's not allow any of this. Let's just keep doing what we've been doing, and we'll putter along at 12 to 40 units per year. And, you know, that let those new 12 to 40 households share in the tax burden along with all the rest of us as we go forward.
And as we have been told by a county study of our demographics in this village, we are missing a segment of the community. And this chart also represents that there is a strong demand, a high demand for that 250 to 400,000, 450, because that is missing. And that coincides with the people, the demographics of people that are missing from our village.
Right, our 25 to 40
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
group, yeah.
Okay. Then there were questions about, this is only doing plowing under farm fields. No, this doesn't just plow under farm fields. If there is a developer in town that has an apartment complex and wishes to improve that apartment complex, go ahead. We can talk to you about regentrification of that development and maybe stimulating you by allowing you additional units. If you have 50 units, we might say with your density, we can put you to 75 units on that same parcel. And that would stimulate them to do something with their property.
Yes.
And the market study would say that you got 50 units, you're going to 75, you're only increasing by 25 of the so many hundreds that we need. Because you got to replace the 50 that you're tearing down. So it allows for, this study gives us information to allow for that same type of development.
Yeah, in fact, you can use it, arguably, the village is going to grow.
Yep.
How much, we can play a significant role in determining that. I mean, we can shut things down and say no more rezonings to residential zoning districts and only allow what's already zoned residential to develop as infill properties. And one of the shortcomings of that is that the cost of all that is just going to keep going up. There's no competition. People just hold out for, the highest price on to the developer pass that cost along, and we're perpetuating the same pattern that we've had. If we want to curtail that impact of demand on greenfield development, the farm fields, then we would be better off to encourage that higher density on infill or redevelopment properties where the infrastructure already exists and lessen the impact on those green fields.
Mhm.
We do have some green fields that exist as infill properties where infrastructure already exists. And, with this whole Richfield utility extension, it's opening up a whole new area in the Freistadt district in that manner.
Sure. And the 5,000 units that they talk about over the next 5 years, this is actually a primary market area that is beyond the boundaries of Germantown. We go into northern Milwaukee County, we go into Ozaki County, we go up to Jackson, we go out to Richfield. All those communities, if we say 0, everybody else can pick up the 1,000 units per year. It's not just Germantown.
That's correct.
I think that got missed.
Right, and he's basically saying that in looking at the overall residential market area, there's a lot of, not a lot, but there's some developments that are underway that are already providing, satisfying some of that demand, but it's not a lot.
Right.
And so it's almost as if he's suggesting, without actually saying it, the first community that sort of races to provide this type of product is going to be the one that's most successful. Well, I don't see us racing to do anything, frankly, but we do need to be cognizant of what we're doing and what we can accommodate without fear of approving something that's going to just sit there and not be used or consumed. I mean, one of the questions we hear quite often is, okay, well, if we allow this higher density, whether it be an apartment building or single-family attached condos or 3 to 4 story flats or whatever the terminology is, well, what happens in 10 years when, the baby boomers have worked through the system? Can those be converted to low-income housing? Well, that's just such an apples and oranges sort of disconnect in thought process. The village doesn't regulate how things are sold and what people charge if they're renting products.
Mhm.
We don't have control over that. We provide for the density, for the type of development and the land use that we prefer for the community.
Sure. And this report doesn't say what is right for Germantown. It tells us what information we can use for us to determine where we want Germantown to go.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I had for now.
But within this study and what they're recommending, we don't even have zoning for the smaller, less expensive portions of it. Can you go back to that first column or grid that you had? So in that range of even 250, I want to call it 250 to 450, on the small lot that it goes on, there's no zoning available within Germantown. Currently, there's no zoning code for anything that's less than, you said, 10,000 square feet.
That's correct. Other than the only zoning that we would have available to accommodate any of these products, frankly, would be to go the route of creating a planned development district
Right.
specifically for that particular project.
And that would include, for an example, for something that I can think of off the top of my head that has a smaller lot size, smaller house size, is the few houses, and I don't know if it's 8 or 9, maybe even 6 to 8, of those that face the high school in the Blackstone Creek. Those were a small lot size, but they were RS7.
PUD.
It's
It-
part, but it was part of the planned
It
development
was part of
district.
the planned development, but the underlying zoning was the 1 and 2 family district, the
Mhm.
RD2.
Okay. So within that, then, we could, the only way that we would look for development to occur or for developers to consider that range is to have zoning that would appeal to that. We wouldn't have developers come here and ask us to create the zoning. They would want to see it here to begin with.
Well, I think the goal that we set for ourselves is to get out in front of that and address through our neighborhood planning efforts and ultimately make code changes that would accommodate different types of residential products and densities. And we have built that into the plan right now. If you look at, for example, the Village Center District, you know, we talk about having a desirable use being higher density residential with densities up to a maximum of 25 units per acre. The goal is to develop a plan, the master plan for the village center that would identify specific properties, parcels within that area, the village center district, where that type of higher density, you know, would be desirable, could be allowed. And look at it in terms of what a higher density on this property means to the overall neighborhood and the village at large. The village center district is the one that has that highest density allowance that's coming out of, or that's in the 2050 plan. Because the goal is to focus infill development at a higher density in the village center where the infrastructure is, where the commercial area is, where the schools are that can be walked to, or, you know, low transportation distances, that sort of thing. So the next step for us is to take this and to keep our eye on this as we develop our neighborhood plans, and our priorities are to get back to the Freistadt district and the Holy Hill district. And to the extent that we're talking about residential development, use this as a guide when we start thinking about, well, what kind of residential, what sort of density, what sort of product, you know, should we be allowing in these areas, knowing that it has a better chance of being successful than just saying, well, we're only going to accommodate single family on quarter acre lots.
Mr. Williams?
In the market analysis, they talk about a pilot program in Jackson that is currently offering homes that's at the low $300,000 range. They said they sold 14 homes in 6 months, and it's the highest sales rate of any development around here locally. Do we know that? I couldn't find anything on. Do we know the details of that subdivision? Like what size lots are they talking about? What size homes, or what are the details on the homes?
I can get all that information for you. They are, if there's some for sale units, that's the goal of the next generation housing program that has a combination of different products, housing types, attached single family units, some townhomes.
Yeah.
I can bring the details or get that out to you so you can see that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah,
And then,
no.
and then second question is, earlier we talked about incentives that the housing initiative in Washington County may offer, that the municipality could offer, such as land subsidies or land donations. Are there benefits in the county's initiative program to the municipalities such as Germantown to offer those types of incentives, or is the county just really looking to incent builders and developers to come in here and develop those types of subdivisions?
Well, if I understand your question correctly, Washington County is in a position to allocate some next generation housing funds to any of the communities that are participating in their program. We happen to be one of them. And from what I understand, we are, if not the next on the list, so to speak, we're close to the top in terms of communities that are eligible. And so as we, continue to move forward and not just identify potential properties through our planning efforts, to also, create, if necessary, the necessary code provisions to accommodate the products that would fill the next generation criteria and ideally meet the requirements or the parameters that are laid out here. I mean, think of this. We just approved the 6-unit townhome concept down in Donjas Bay in Fond du Lac Avenue on a half-acre parcel as an infill project. And I, like the rest of you, I'm anxious to see how that turns out in terms of once they construct the units and how quickly they might be consumed, whether it's, I haven't even heard yet if it's going to be a for sale product, which they alluded to when they got their approvals, but they could be either for sale or rentals.
See him build it first.
Okay, yeah, no, that answered my question. I was just wondering if there are incentives available to the municipalities as well, or if they were just trying to incent developers and builders to come in and.
It's
and
a
offer product
combination
Okay.
of things. But you become, you become part of the program and you participate alongside with the developer and the county and the municipality.
And the next generation program is not necessarily an entire development of next generation. If you have a couple of units that you want to make, 6 or 7 units, 6 or 8 units, if you want to make those next gen, but the rest of the development is traditional. That's what we're learning now is it doesn't have to be an entire development. So you can selectively, that's why this one down on Donjas Bay and 145 is looking at that route is because we've learned it doesn't have to be a whole development. You can piecemeal it, you can backfill, you can take that difficult lot and incentivize that lot to be developed.
So with that concept, then you're just filling the need at 1 or 2 at a time, not within the range that they said is more desirable for people within that price range. You're just piecemealing it in. My biggest concern is if you're looking at a developer that comes forward and let's say we have the zoning that would allow the 250 to, I don't know, 400,000 range. Would it be better to plan that in its own area outside of any neighboring subdivisions that currently exist for those that would come here and say, you're going to be driving down my price of my home or my value based on the price of what's coming in?
I think that's certainly a consideration. I think that's what we hear consistently. And we've sort of built that in some ways in our 2050 plan where we've identified, for example, the Freistadt district and the Holy Hill Gateway district as areas suitable for a higher density residential where there currently isn't any other than a handful of farm sites scattered around. The other area we've talked about, again, is the Village Center District and the notion of infilling and possibly encouraging redevelopment to the extent that that's possible. And that certainly would be the goal.
Trustee Ball.
So to that aspect, I believe, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I believe Trustee Pieper and I had a conversation about housing in Hartford or Jackson. And she had visited some of them and they were very nicely done. They were the 8 family units, drive-in garage, from the garage into your unit, stacked too high or a 2-story unit. Those, I believe she was saying that they were selling in the 280 range. So And that's new construction up there.
Hmm.
Can that come down here? Jackson, Hartford isn't that far away. Maybe we can get something like that, but it's a different type of unit. It's a different type of housing stock, but you're getting a higher density on a lot to share that cost. So that's the offsets you have to make is get a higher density to get down to some of these prices.
Right, but it's gonna take, I think it's the way things work these days, and maybe it's always been this way. We're not gonna get the developer who's looking to develop these just as a cold call. They're gonna walk in and say, I mean, I get a handful of those every now and then, but when we talk about our basic set of regulations and zoning code, they basically say, well, thanks, but I gotta go look somewhere else.
Mhm.
In order for any of that to take place, we're gonna have to be more proactive and not just rely on planned development district approach, where we would come in and tailor something after we've had a conversation, is to, create an overlay district possibly that provides for a higher density in exchange for meeting certain parameters with materials and the architecture and the number of units and that sort of thing, to hit some of these parameters to provide the product that is affordable for people who want to live here and work here, but still satisfies our own desire for architectural character and some of that that we're seemingly real happy with and are consistent with wanting to require as part of development.
The other thing that I recall is that the developer that came in and was looking at County Line and
Lannon.
County Line and Lannon. You remember their proposal, they had a swimming pool, they had a pavilion building, they had fitness centers, they had amenities, which this property up in Jackson, I believe, had none of that stuff. It was just the units. So there's part of your trade-off.
Well,
Well, and if you recall in the study, one of his recommendations is with regard to larger tracts of land is to try and encourage the creation of a destination type master plan community where they have a variety of these housing types, from single family, something we're more used to a higher density, single family for sale and for rent in certain areas, but where within that development, there are a lot of amenities, more than what we typically see. And he even goes so far as to provide some graphics and I don't recall if he gave any specific names.
And they put their parks in there. They put a park
Put parks.
in the development.
There may be a government facility, whether it be a school or some other building or need. The one that comes to mind, just since, because I've been through it recently, was Smith's Crossing out in Sun Prairie. It's sort of a traditional neighborhood. It's a Veridian product with a variety of home types that are intended to address young people and retirees as well. But it's built upon the more traditional narrow lots, deeper lots, garages in back, 2-story, some 3-story units, parks, trails.
There's a brand new church there,
There's a new
a
church.
church school.
There's a small area of commercial development set aside. Not entirely self-contained, but something where it's a mixed use development, and it's built upon a consistent appearance and quality materials and design, where it is, as he termed it, a destination type development.
Yeah, and that has been very successful.
So wouldn't you think as part of this housing study, everything is all new construction, but wouldn't some of that range on the smaller or lower end of the scale? Couldn't that be absorbed through older housing stocks that are then resold to people that are looking for starter homes?
Well, I think one of the things that he points out in the report is that the demand is so great And the inventory is so low that it's driving up the price of even the existing housing stock to the point where it's not achievable by those who you would think could afford it or want to afford it.
But even as the early boomers start moving out of their homes, that those won't change over as part of that, call it a median range.
It's hard to
Three-
say. I mean, when you look at a
250
report
to-
like this, from the purely selfish perspective of a homeowner, it's like, yeah, they're driving up the price of the existing stuff. So when I'm ready to sell in a few years, it's like, great, let's keep it up.
Yeah, as long
Don't,
as you-
don't allow any more new,
Well,
competition.
as long as the interest rates go opposite, you're in, but.
But that's just sort of a sideways approach to trying to, achieve some level of economic development in your community. You can't operate that way.
There are those homes out there.
So,
Because when I was selling my mother-in-law's house, I was looking for the comps, and there are lower priced houses in this community. I'm just not sure people are looking to buy that type of house. So even if it's a fixer upper, I'm not seeing that in the.
Right, I mean, people, they're looking for something that's ready to go.
Yeah.
They don't want the fixer up.
Mhm. But you can find it. You can find something in that lower price range.
right, but based on this grid, we only hit one demographic, 400 to 440 and 49. It's the only place we match.
Right. And in fact, when you look at that table in the report, the line right above it says, note, single-family closing prices in Germantown alone are currently 10% higher than those reflected through the PMA as a whole, as shown in this table. So you pull out Germantown and everything's even that much higher.
Mr. Shedid,
I just had one quick thing, Jeff. Unfortunately, I had to be on WebEx during this meeting, and I really wanted to be able to hear this guy's take on this analysis. Is that recorded anywhere?
Yeah, a good part of it was recorded on the, is it the YouTube?
Is it on YouTube?
Yeah, we can set you up with that.
Okay, I'll call you tomorrow or something, get that link. Thank you.
I can go on about this all night.
really?
Yeah.
For hours?
How far do you want to go?
Well.
It's up to you.
Why don't we?
It's up to the commissioners.
Do you want to have a special meeting in a couple of weeks?
Can we get that guy back on?
He will come back on if we want him to.
I think, he got cut a little bit short on his presentation, and in fairness to, preparing the report and taking the time that he did to prepare it. Ask him if he'd want to come back and, I'm not going to say conclude, but at least, have additional discussion, that's not time tempered,
Sure.
on that report. Cause it just didn't, we, all of a sudden he just got kind of cut short, and I think he had more to say and more to add.
Yeah, yes. It takes a little bit to, at least for me, to pick up on the terminology and get past some of those hurdles. And understand what he's talking about. But beyond that, yeah, I think he has a lot more to share. And based on my most recent conversation with him, I'm sure he'll be willing to do that.
Good.
Can we also get audience participation in that?
Sure. Oh, not now. Just wait.
That meeting, we have a whole meeting.
Yeah, and we could do that. That's a good idea. All right, anything else? New business item A? No? Okay. Then we can go to new business item B. American Architectural Group, agent for Washington Drive LLC, property owner, and Midwest Products, Inc., located at W129 North 11025 Washington Drive, site plan review for a new 52,038 square foot manufacturing and warehouse building and revised building elevations on tonight's agenda for action. More information, background on new business item B. Once again, we'll turn the meeting over to Jeff Retzloff, the Community Development Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item was on our agenda last month, and the Plan Commission conditionally approved the proposal for the 52,000 square foot manufacturing and storage building with 12 conditions. Condition number 11 was talked about at length, and it specifically required revised elevations to match the renderings that were distributed and shown that evening, and to bring those back to the Plan Commission. So is Adam here? Adam, you want to come up and just sort of walk us through? I've got him on the screen. So we're here tonight specifically to look at the revised elevations and the renderings and take action on those.
Perfect.
The staff recommendation is to approve them, subject to some minor changes to one of the conditions in the original list.
Yes, so the last time we were here, I think there were two items that were of main discussion. One on the warehouse side and one on the office side. So maybe we'll start with the one on the warehouse side. So there was a discrepancy between the renderings that were shown and the 2D color elevations. The discrepancy was on the 2D elevations, there was a dark gray band that went around the warehouse part of the building. The rendering showed vertical gray bands. So if we could maybe go back to the.
What do you want to see?
Next one, yep. Go to the next slide, I think it was.
It's in half the drawings.
Yep, so this one. So this was on the previous 2D elevations, the gray band was around the entire top part of the building. We thought it would be more consistent. It wasn't quite as desired, so we thought it'd be more consistent if we matched the gray elements of the office. And so we changed the vertical to where those windows are. That was the main. So it was actually shown last time. It was just a discrepancy between the rendering and the 2D elevation. So this is just fixing that.
This slide shows the revised.
Yes.
And this next one shows what was the original on those
Yes. Yeah.
We still got to sign it.
Yep.
revised.
That's not there.
And so as a part of that conversation, then there was a question about what would happen to the south elevation. So these are the north and east elevation. So on the south elevation, it was asked if we were going to be providing the same dark coloring that was on the rest of the warehouse. It did not show that, but we did modify it to show the dark vertical stripes on that as well. And then there's also a rendering, I think, of that southeast corner looking, keep going. Yes, that one right there. So just showing around the south part of the building and showing that we're carrying those dark gray vertical bands around the entire part of the building. So that was kind of the warehouse discussion. As far as should I just keep going, or do we want to talk about the warehouse part first? Is that?
Okay. This says revised, so it's not in there.
Am I clicking too fast?
Where's the sign?
It's not there.
It's in the elevations, but it's not in the rendering. So is the sign in there or out of there?
Yeah, so, okay, so that was the two things. So there was the warehouse part and then the office part. So now the sign has to do with the office part. So now switching to the office part of the design. So the conversation was, we had shown a tall wall, I guess that was part of the office sign. But we were informed that that's not really allowed, would be to have a sign on the side of the building, that it had to be more of a ground mounted sign.
That's correct.
So we acknowledge that part. So the conversation was that either has to be taken down, or it was suggested that we move the wall to be next to the front elevation. I'm sorry, the front entry. We looked at moving that wall to the front entry, and it wasn't something that was desired. We didn't really like the look of that. And the reason is because we feel that the entry already is kind of a highlighted feature of the building. We've taken care to make it the tallest part of the office structure. We've upgraded the material around the office. It has a large canopy to signify that it's the entrance. The material it's called a longboard product. It looks like a wood product. It's stained, it's textured like wood. So we feel like we accomplished the goal of making that main entry unique and stand out from the rest of the building without adding that wall. If the wall was desired, we showed an option of keeping it at the current location as a sign. And if that was the case and we wanted, or you guys felt that the wall should stay, we feel it should be the sign, and we'd request a variance and we'd go through that whole process, but we'd prefer it without the sign. And that's why we're presenting these elevations as is without the sign.
Sorry, is it allowed or is it not allowed?
It's not allowed.
Not the sign,
That's correct.
but he's saying that if they don't have the sign, they don't want the wall.
Right.
You're saying you want the wall, not the
No,
sign.
I haven't thought about it without the sign.
So-
A blank wall doesn't really do anything for me.
Now, for whatever reason, I don't have that rendering
Oh,
that showed the
okay.
wall and the sign.
Ah,
in,
gotcha.
It's in the.
You have it in your,
2Ds.
you have it in the packet?
No, it's in the 2Ds.
There should be a rendering that shows the sign, with the entire building, with and without the sign. Oh,
I don't have the full packet again.
What's wrong with you?
I don't have a full packet. I downloaded just the agenda. Again,
The wall-mounted signage isn't allowed in the business park.
All right.
and I guess we, this board cannot do anything to allow that. It has to go to a different board because we have to enforce the zoning.
And given how many we've said no to that are already out there, I would prefer that we don't go down that road.
So then the elevations that are presented, do we have both with and without? I did not see with and without.
No, it's just without this.
No, it's with. Go back to the front.
Where do you see a sign?
This is the old elevation because it's got the gray bands at the top.
Oh, yeah, this is the old one, yeah.
All right, there's your sign is right here.
Go to the other one. There. That's the correct elevation, but it's still got the sign on it. Yes, no?
So there was renderings submitted with and without, and there were 2D elevations that were submitted with and were out. So I'm guessing we just maybe don't have both.
Okay.
So the intent of that was that if the sign was looking like it wasn't going to go forward, we'd prefer that. We submitted the version without, so apparent, but that might not be included in that.
That's
So
where I got confused.
Totally understand, yep.
So,
And I believe if-
elevations with and renderings without again.
Yes.
So I'm gonna say, okay. I'm not gonna say anything right now.
And then is there? Because I thought there was an elevation that had, or there's a rendering, there should be an overall rendering
Mm-hmm.
there.
There is.
That,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's what, yes. So that,
and that's where I got confused. The
Yes.
rendering shows it without,
Yes.
the elevation showed it with. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure which I was approving.
It
Okay,
still looks nice.
all right,
Questions?
I'm ready for motion.
No, Mr. Laschensky.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think it looks great compared to the original. Outside, I like the colors, so.
I like your wall. Any other questions? All right, motion, please.
Make a motion to approve the design as presented in the renderings without the sign wall.
Second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Not opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming
thank you very much.
and thank you for making the revisions. Appreciate it. Next item under new business is item C, Excel Engineering, Inc., agent for Bethlehem Lutheran Church, property owner located at North 100 West 14290 Bel Air Lane, site plan review for 23,471 square foot building and parking expansion, revised site and landscaping plans on tonight's agenda for action. More information, background on new business item C. Once again, we'll turn it over to Director Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item too was conditionally approved by the Plan Commission at the January 8th meeting. 11 conditions. Number 6 through 9 dealt with landscaping issues that the Plan Commission discussed at length and ended up wanting some revisions to address a couple of topics or major concerns. One being the removal of existing vegetation and trees and the subsequent planned replacement of that along the west property line, west of the new proposed parking area right along the property line. And secondly, with concern with street trees being removed and the subsequent replacement along Fond du Lac Avenue, given the amount of grading that was proposed around the north side of the site and along Fond du Lac Avenue. Did I say Appleton? I meant Fond du Lac Avenue. The elevations for the proposed, we can click through those real quick. I wanted to get to, this is the revised site plan. Is somebody from Excel here that could just quickly highlight the changes? I know you moved the parking lot just slightly in and a couple other things, but
Certainly. Reed Jans with Excel Engineering. As Jeff has mentioned, basically took that parking lot from where it was and shifted it over about 5 feet to the east to allow basically more of a buffering area between that parking lot and the property line. Additionally, with that, we can basically keep 16 feet of that tree line, so to speak, intact. And basically start from there with some grading activities and putting in that parking lot. And basically with that grading activities, we will have to remove like 7 pine trees in that along that parking lot area. But we're proposing to, with the proposed landscape plan, to come back with 15 pine trees along that area, in addition to keeping basically 16 feet off the property line, and any vegetation there will be able to be kept. So basically brought that over, provided much more additional landscaping along the parking lot, as well as basically lining Fond du Lac Avenue, as well as Bel Air Lane, with additional street trees meeting that 1 per 50 foot requirement, and overall significantly increasing landscaping on site.
so you reduced the amount of grading needed on the site. This is the original grading plan. This is the revised. So you didn't have to take as many street trees down along Fond du Lac. This was the original demo plan along that west property line. You were removing up to the property line. Now you pulled that way back as shown on the revised demo plan. In your landscaping, you've got a lot more trees than what was originally proposed. So the staff's recommendation is to approve these revised plans and then some alterations to the conditions 6 through 9, effectively deleting those because they've been satisfied by these changes.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented with the conditions as noted.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion to approve.
Thank you. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming. Next item under new business is item D, Keller Inc., agent for Orange Blossom LLC, property owner of David J. Frank Landscape Contracting, located at North 120 West 21350 Freistadt Road. Site plan review for a 9,376 square foot maintenance building on tonight's agenda for action. More background information and update on this new business item. Once again, we'll turn the meeting over to Community Development Director Jeff Retzlaff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you recall, back in 2023, DJ Frank came to us with a series of proposals to combine lots, to rezone the property, and to get a conditional use permit, all needed as prerequisites for future growth and expansion of their landscaping contracting services facility off of Freistadt Road. In the early part of 2023, we approved a CSM to combine all their lands as highlighted in red together into one 39-acre parcel. We rezoned portions from B3 general business and A1 agricultural into the A2 agricultural district that allows horticultural contracting services with a conditional use permit. And we issued a conditional use permit specifically for the DJ Frank operation, also providing for future site improvements and expansion, including a new maintenance building, office building remodeling and expansion, and also associated parking area expansion around the office area. and also an above-ground fuel storage facility relocation and expansion. On tonight's agenda, we are asking you to look at and take action on the new maintenance building proposal as detailed in further slides. This is the existing site. The proposed site plan with the entire property in sight. And here, just sort of a zoom in to the area where the proposed maintenance building is located. That proposed building, again, 9,376 square feet, 42 by 224 feet, intended for vehicle equipment maintenance and parts storage. It's a single-story building with a 20-foot clear height inside. There's an 800 square foot mezzanine for storage. There are 10 bays with overhead doors on the east elevation, windows along the west elevation. The materials it's basically a steel-sided pole building with a masonry firewall in the middle of the building, dividing it into two separate buildings, if you will, for fire code purposes, since it's not served by public water. Click through the elevations that are proposed and the renderings. We've got the floor plan in one of the slides. We can discuss those as necessary, but the bottom line is the staff recommendation is to approve the site development and building plans for the maintenance building only, the 9,376 square feet building for DJ Frank Landscape Contracting Services, subject to the three conditions. Do we have somebody from DJ Frank who wants to add anything or respond to questions that we might have? Thanks.
Yeah. Scott Loston with Keller, just here to answer any questions.
Why are you looking at me?
Commissioners? Figure you're guilty. Commissioners, any questions? Comments? Trustee Baum.
So the back of this building is the signage to Germantown on the interstate. That's what I'm gonna see.
No, you
What am I
know,
gonna
when you drive by, there's a really nice string or line of mature evergreens that back up. They're on top of a retaining wall right behind this building. You'll be lucky to see the building, frankly.
Fabulous. Thank you.
I guess that was my question too. What's the difference in elevation between the highway and the right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna. I don't remember the exact height, but
I don't know mechanicals.
While he's looking for that, I'll just tell you, we've been grappling a little bit at the staff level with a potential name for the new frontage road that we're proposing. Still haven't gotten approval for railroad crossing. But the idea at the top of the list is High Point Pass, simply because that frontage road would go around the east side of what is one of the, if not the highest points in the village, which is right on the DJ Frank property, just right along the property line with Highway 41. You know, as you're heading northbound and you go up over the rise by DJ Frank and then you slowly sort of drop down, that point is one of the highest points in the village.
yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mr. Williams?
Jeff, I just want to confirm, when I read the write-up, it said that the proposed mechanics building is, the area around it is hard-packed road bond gravel. Do we not have a requirement that be paved up to the building, or is the road bond gravel around the building permitted?
We require pavement for areas that serve customers or patrons for a commercial or industrial business. Or what we haven't done is require it in the agricultural areas for things like this landscaping type business. For all intents and purposes, the gravel functions like it's impervious area and it's treated as such in terms of stormwater management, which is why the engineer in one of his comments is that we need a fuller stormwater management analysis when we get to the point of dealing with the office and the additional parking lot impervious area.
We do have asphalt butting to the approaches of the new shop as well.
Okay, yeah, I just remember it coming up, not recently, but I think it was a storage unit that we were requiring it on.
Yeah, any areas that, again, serve the patrons or customers, we require the pavement and that sort of thing.
But you don't do a customer-based business.
He's Keller.
They do,
You might know.
yeah, they do. They have customers, they have
Come
visitors.
in,
Yeah,
Not to that area
yeah.
though.
Not into the mechanic shop,
Not
but
to the-
into their
yeah.
office.
They have the front office area.
front area.
Yes. And that's where the additional asphalt is going to be proposed as part of their parking lot expansion with their office.
There's paved.
Yeah.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve the plan as presented with the 3 conditions.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion to approve. No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item under new business is item E, Keller Inc., agent for Park 4 Properties LLC, property owner of Force Global located at North 114 West 18635, Clinton Drive, site plan review for a 7,500 square foot building addition and site improvements on tonight's agenda for action. Once again, we'll turn the meeting over to Director Etzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Force Global, located on Clinton Drive in our industrial park, is seeking approval of plans to expand their existing facility. That facility is 6,400 square feet. It's highlighted on the screen. Proposal is to add 7,500 square feet on the backside, an area that is predominantly impervious surface already. There is some additional asphalt that's being added in front of the dock doors. The Force Global, they're in a business in sales, service, and support for the distributors and end users of heat sealing controllers, components, and consumables developed by their parent company, Ropex, with headquarters in Germany, for joining and cutting thermoplastics. That's what I got out of their website information. I encourage you to jump on and see what else they provide and do here in the village of Germantown. Their existing operations are Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. They currently have 5 to 8 employees with expected growth over the next 5 to 10 years between 25 and 50%. The proposed site plan, again, is to add the building expansion to the south side of the building for manufacturing, equipment, warehouse, and general storage purposes. 75 by 100 square foot addition will match the existing smooth face painted CMU on the rear side of the existing facility with an 18-foot wall height, a flat roof, and the color scheme will match the existing. There are 3 12-foot dock bays with overhead doors on the east elevation, 1 12-foot dock bay with overhead door on the north elevation, and some windows on the west elevation as shown here. And the proposed renderings. The site improvements, there's not much other than some additional asphalt and highlighting of parking spaces. They'll utilize the 2 existing access driveways on Clinton Drive. There is enough asphalt on site for the 12 stalls that are recommended for a development of this size, industrial, manufacturing, and warehouse. That will be striped accordingly. They'll be served by existing water and sanitary connections. Landscaping, there's nothing new that's proposed. As indicated in the staff report, there's a recommendation to add some additional street trees to bring the site up to the recommended 1 per 50 linear feet requirement. There is additional lighting proposed for wall-mounted cutoff fixtures on the building addition. The staff recommendation is to approve, subject to 5 conditions. And I will note that since the original staff report went out, I handed out a revised staff report just before the start of tonight's meeting. There was a condition in there dealing with parking stalls that was satisfied with the submission of a new site plan that was included in the packet that went out on Friday. Just that the old staff report wasn't updated at that time. So now the staff recommendation is to approve with 5 conditions, and the parking stall condition has been satisfied. Is there anybody here from Force Global that would like to respond, add anything, or just simply respond to questions? Aaron?
I'm Aaron with Keller, just here to field questions.
Trustee Baum?
Is there no requirement for landscaping in this?
Yeah, he said.
There's a condition that requires some additional street trees.
But there's nothing around the building. There's no base planting around the building. It's just barren.
On this rendering, it shows that way.
If you want to require some additional plantings, you'll have to do that. There's some minimal plantings along the elevation facing the road, but beyond that, it's just clipped lawn.
One of the items on the street tree, there's actually light poles at each corner. 2 street trees centered between the 2 egress paths. So to add street trees to each side would be difficult with the light posts in a way. So we're open to, adding something in front of the building as a supplement to the street trees if possible.
There's my compromise.
There's Josh.
Well,
Tarantino.
on theirs, it says a minimum planting size of 2.5-inch caliper, but on the other ones, we got 3.
In the business park,
Okay.
there is a specific requirement for 3-inch, but in the standard
Okay.
village requirement is 2.5.
Fine.
Oh, it just shows the difference between the industrial to the business park. Actually, from our overall to the business park.
Right.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve as presented with the 5 conditions. Is it 5 conditions now or is it 4? No, it's 5.
It's 5.
You took out number 3.
Who's crossed off?
So I'll start with that.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion to approve. Trustee Baum.
I would like to make a motion to modify condition number 2 for the 2 additional deciduous street trees. And in lieu of those street trees, put some base planting along the north side of the building between the sidewalk and the building. This dark area
Oh,
here.
their walkway.
Yeah.
Front landscaping bed.
If you look can you go to the rendering? The bottom rendering. I assume the white's the sidewalk and the black is black between the building and the sidewalk. Yeah, let's get some landscaping on the base of that building. Something in lieu of the trees out front, and I'll leave that to staff to finalize that design with the applicant.
And it's your
Amendment,
motion to amend.
yes.
Do we have a second?
Okay.
Motion made and seconded to amend. Discussion on that motion to amend. Mr. Lashesky.
What do we get by taking out the trees, though? I mean, I understand the additional landscaping, but why not leave the trees?
Can't get them in.
Light poles there.
The 2 in the center?
No, the 2 in the center stay, those are existing.
Got it.
We're supposed to put a tree there and a tree here.
Oh, okay. I thought those were the 2 trees going in.
No.
Okay,
Those are
no,
existing.
yeah, okay.
The entry and with the 2 driveways and the light poles, there's really no place. And the trees they have there are already centered.
Bamboo.
So,
Further discussion on a motion to amend. No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Back to the motion as amended. Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Please congratulate Force Global for their addition and for basically doubling the size of their company and for choosing to still build in Germantown. I appreciate that very much. Next item under new business is item F, Everett Friends, agent for the Anton Friends Trust and SA Technologies LLC, property owners, 65.2 acres east of Fond du Lac Avenue, north of Donjas Bay Road, a planned development district consultation for a 580 to 600 unit mixed use residential commercial development stated as Arbor Village, and on tonight's agenda for discussion. To kind of kick this off and give us more information on this new business item, once again, we'll turn the meeting over to Director Retzlaff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This project and property have been discussed a few times, most recently May of last year, where we went over the latest concept plan for the overall mixed-use development that was proposed. The first time was back when the 2050 plan was first being developed. We had conversations and we had a meeting. We were given a presentation of a similar mixed-use development proposal for the property by the property owners. And since then, the village has adopted the 2050 plan. This particular property, 65 acres in size, is located in the Victory Center corridor, as highlighted on the map on the screen. And within the Victory Center corridor, there is the list of preferred land uses that include acceptable uses, residential, single-family, multifamily, senior housing, and commercial uses as well. And we discussed that off and on, maybe even last May. If you look at the minutes that were included in the packet from the last meeting, there was conversation back and forth, some questioning whether or not the site is the best use of it is residential, or should it be something different, possibly industrial or commercial. To the extent that the plan has been adopted as it is, the variety of uses, including commercial, could locate on the site, as well as residential at a higher density, upwards of 10 units per acre for multifamily, and 3 units per acre on single family, and 6 units per acre on 2 and 4 family. That's the parameters that were laid out for the Victory Center corridor. The latest proposal is for, again, 65 acres. The current zoning is M1, and would have to be revised. We talked about the creation of a planned development district. The mixed-use residential comprised of ranch and townhouse duplexes, 4-unit, 6-unit, and 14-unit 2-story buildings, 3-story 42-unit buildings, and 4-story 105-unit buildings, with a total of 580 to 600 total dwelling units proposed across the 65 acres, yields an average density of 8.8 to 9.2 dwelling units per acre. There's also a commercial component that has been scaled down slightly in size since the last plan that we looked at, that could range between 20 and upwards of 40,000 square feet of retail commercial uses on the site located close to the roundabout at Donjas Bay and Fond du Lac Avenue. This project is intended to be a multi-phase development, and again, would be rezoned and approved under the planned development district regulations for the village. Everett, did you want to, or is Jeff here? Jeff, do you want to go through or go over the changes that you're reflected on the revised concept plan? And I do have all of the elevations, floor plans, and what have you. In fact, I can give this to you if you want, and you can scroll through
We
as.
can just start with the site plan here. Jeff Grenier, Concepts and Architecture. So we came 4 months ago with the original plan that was looked at many years ago, and we had some discussion, and so I took the plan back and reworked it according to what I heard at the meeting, which was adding more entrances and exits. So we added up on Country, and then Donges Bay, we added an exit, and we kept the same one on Fond du Lac Avenue. We broke the buildings up into different types of units, so we can have basically everything that the report said. We have duplexes, we have 4 units, we have 6 units, 8 units. Larger buildings that can be workforce housing, they can, some of the stuff, some of these buildings I actually designed for up in Sun Prairie at, what's that?
What's the name of it?
Smith's Crossing, yeah. Some of these buildings are in Smith's Crossing, and the new hot one over in Fitchburg is Terra Vesa, and some of these buildings are also over in Terra Vesa, which is a Viridian. So it allows from everything from, renters to buyers, and we didn't put any single family on because we saw the report and there was enough of that. So I guess these buildings are just placeholders. These are a bunch of different buildings I've designed over the last 10 years up in Madison, Middleton, Sun Prairie. And I had my rendering guy go through, place them on the site. Depending on how many stories we build and how much commercial we have, depends on how many units we actually have. So basically, we're looking at getting a PDD done, and then we would have each individual lot zoned for either 2 units, 4 units, 8 units, whatever. And then we would bring those buildings in individually and get those approved. That would be part of the SIP phase. So we're not actually, these won't be the buildings exactly. But it gets a good representation of what they're going to look like.
I didn't include it in one of the slides, but at the last, back in May of last year, we did have a sort of a phasing schedule of sorts. It showed area by area what was going to go first, 1 through 6 different phases.
Yeah, besides the buildings changes on there, that's pretty much what we're still thinking on phasing. We first want to get this PDD. We can do that as part of the PDD, but tonight we want to, get a consensus on, is this something that we want? And we want to be able to work with staff and develop the PDD and bring that forward.
Mr. Nilles.
Is that a commercial element in the southwest corner?
Yes.
Yes.
40,000 square feet commercial, depending on what's needed. I mean, part of that belongs to the village right now. And that we took that lot and added it to ours to make a nice corner commercial lot that could be used for anything. And then also the first 2 buildings on Fond du Lac would have commercial elements on the first floor.
Just to the north of that, you're saying?
Yep. So that's why if you go back to the site plan, you can see that the double row parking.
Yep. Got it.
For the commercial areas.
Got it.
So everything that I show here has at least a 1 car. Most of them have 2 car. Everything's got underground parking. The bigger buildings are a new concept that I started with one of my other developers in Madison and Fitchburg, and we range from 100 to the one in Fitchburg is 189 units. They're 4 stories. They're built around a parking ramp. Everybody's got their own space. So
Was that what's that colorful little thing is in the middle of the building there?
yep, the top roof deck is a recreational area for both buildings. So we put tennis courts, a running track, what else up there? Basketball court, fire pits.
And the other half is parking?
Yep.
So
You-
it's like a parking structure?
So go back to the plans. I think I gave you the floor plans.
Oh, you want the floor plans?
Yeah, for the one more. You got another one right here. So this is actually a 4-story parking ramp that we build and then we wrap apartments around it. Anything from 600 square feet efficiencies to 2,000 square feet, 3 bedrooms. We have, this building here, I think, has 15 different styles of apartments that, so you can start out with a efficiency and work your way up to a 3-bedroom if you
Got a
want.
roof over that parking area?
Nope,
So whoever parks on the top floor is outside?
just from here to here.
It's the section right there.
Oh,
Recreational area that's not usable during the winter,
okay.
except this year it's
So you said
usable all year.
floor level.
Yeah, it slopes down here, so then you go underneath and you come here, level 1, 2,
Oh, I see.
3,
Okay,
4.
I got it.
Another question is, so you said you've designed this type of development in Fitchburg?
Pittsburgh, yep. right-
Where in Fitchburg?
Pittsburgh, right on, MM. I think it's just south of-
14.
off of.
Lacey
14.
Road?
Lacey Road.
Yeah,
yep,
okay, I know
Lacey.
where that is then. Okay. yeah.
Yep, so I did 180 unit right there, and then I have a couple 36 units right there, and then I did a bunch of duplexes back in the actual Terravesa.
Okay, my in-laws are in that area. I know that area.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's actually like 8 feet between houses. They're pretty close. We had to actually alternate the window wells so you could mow between them.
It's popular out there. Commissioners,
I'm sorry.
go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to jump in and say, I know you clearly you said it, that the type of product units, structures are consistent with what the residential market analysis report talks about. One of the things that we sort of were talking at the end, near the end of that conversation earlier this evening was this notion of there being a destination type development that would accommodate multiple types of residential units
Mhm.
like this. What I don't see here is any sort of a neighborhoodish park
So,
or other features that really make it a destination.
so this is all park back in here where all the trees are. Then this is a community center on the corner.
Okay.
And between the 4 rows, north, south, 4 rows of buildings,
That's all park.
there's parkland between the 2 rows.
Yeah, that's based off like the Viridian Providence and the Smith Crossing. They have that up there too.
Corridors of open
So
space.
go back to
green
the floor plan.
Floor plan.
I mean, sorry, site plan, first site plan, right here. This is all open park area here. What do you use? This is our pedestrian path. It's through, comes over to here, goes from one end of the property to the other, woods, pedestrian path, and then these are all predicted right now to be public roads and, public sewer, public water.
So you could put any amenity in between those buildings. When you go up into that Madison area, where it's be Fitchburg or Middleton or Verona or any of those, you see a lot of dog runs.
Yep.
So that they'll put dog parks in between some of that.
A lot of vacant areas here, just about everyone, the one in the forest, I did a bunch of building. We have outdoor, indoor, end areas for dogs, for little dogs, big dogs. Playground equipment, soccer fields, half soccer fields, you know,
Will you be installing those as part of the development?
it's all part of the discussion.
And what about the community center? What sort of features are included in that?
Right now, it's just considered a building with some parking area, but that's one of the discussion areas that, you know, we're willing to look at.
What have you provided in other communities?
Actually, most of the communities don't have them.
They have rooms. Within the development, they'll have rooms in the in the big units that they can have parties or rent out for parties.
So like on the bigger buildings that I've done in the past, like these buildings here, we actually put in gyms, and some are run privately, and then some actually are open to the public as well. Coffee shops, same way.
And that same concept is what you consider here?
Mm-hmm.
You just want me to talk, don't you?
No, I'm looking for anybody. It's discussion. Mr. Lashewski.
I don't know. Part of the lake, I guess, the center, maybe the north, but boy, the density in the south end with 2 parking ramps surrounded by that level of density. I can't picture it there. Based on whatever the neighborhood surrounding it. Again, this is what we talked about last year, whenever it was, that putting 600 units here. You kind of change the whole center of where the village is. Just
You got an aerial of this?
doesn't really.
May I elaborate on your
There, okay,
topic?
thank you. Trustee Ball.
So what I equated this to was the Twin Towers on 4145. Those 2 apartments, those 2 buildings, they stand up, they're monolithic, they don't belong there. Everybody has said they're wrong for that place. They should have been put downtown. I've got 2 4-story, 100-unit apartment buildings that are going to stick out like a sore thumb.
Actually, they're shorter than the 36 units. So if you're driving up Fond du Lac, you will not even see the top of the 105 units.
I have a problem with them.
I
also have a-
I would recommend that you take a drive into Madison and to Forest and
I'll be
Terra
there at the
Vista and
coach
take a look
seminar
at it.
Next week, I'll take a drive over there.
Yep, and then there's a whole bunch right along the interstate up there in Cottage Grove as well.
Because they face the freeway now.
My further problem with them is 100-unit buildings, I don't think belong in this part of the village. If you want to put a high-density product out there, I believe it should be in the central business district. It should be where there are more amenities that people can walk to, because that's what people are asking for. This is in the wrong place for me.
Yeah.
The other aspect that you show, if you go back to the site plan, the overall, give me the green, that green one. Yeah, one more, that one. As I was reading this study and looking at this drawing, I could see the lower density, garages, 1-2-story buildings that are on the north end and along I believe they're along the east end by the creek there, whatever your water detention is. I started to get a little warm and fuzzy about those. But when I start looking at the large apartment buildings, I don't think they belong out here. This is getting too far out where I don't think the large stuff works here.
And then again, we're looking at density here. So I mean, those 105s could go away and we could put in 230 units or 330 units as well. I mean, this was just something I just wanted to give you guys an example of what we're doing in other neighborhoods that are like this.
And but it's more of a discussion for the board as to where does high density belong in this community? How about we go put it up at the Freistadt district? How about we put it,
That doesn't have amenities.
what?
There's no amenities there that are walking distance.
How about we put it at, Donjas Bay and Landon Road? Donjas Bay? No, County Line and Landon Road. where's the right place for that type of a product in the community? I think the only place that that type of thing belongs
Village Center.
is in the village center.
And that's pretty much the current vision for the village center, short of completing a detailed master plan, was that the highest density would go in and around the village center.
Yeah. So trying to bring this level of density this far out is problematic to me. I'm gonna reiterate, I'm not sure residential is the right thing for here. I have been a proponent that it should be industrial and a continuation of the industrial park. But I have said, if you bring me a great concept, I'll think about it. And I don't see this as a great concept yet.
You know, I don't think the property's deep enough to try and accommodate both industrial along the railroad and residential further out. It's either got one or the other.
Yes.
And frankly, knowing that, granted, on this aerial photograph, what's immediately on the west side of Fond du Lac is those two repair facilities just north of the intersection, Weissman and Accurite. Then there's the Stonegate Apartments, and then a couple of old large tracks, 5-7 acre tracks with an old farmhouse that'll redevelop at some point.
Yeah.
It's almost as if this has got to be the transition area between the larger lot, single family that's off the screen to the left, to the west, and the higher intensity industrial stuff, you know, on the east side of the railroad track.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, a higher density residential is consistent with what we've got in the corridor. And it's just a matter of coming up with the right combination. I tend to agree with you that the 105 unit buildings are a stretch.
Yeah.
For this area, certainly for us.
Yeah.
Germantown. But the other stuff, the 4, the 6, the 12, I can see that working. What I don't know is, since I'm only looking at a footprint or a rooftop, is the architecture, the materials, and what character these buildings have. I mean, I'll be honest, just a rectangle scares me. So I'd like to see, and as part of the implementation plan for the PDD, that some detailed architectural standards that are worked in and held to, so that when you go from phase 1 of 6, 4 unit buildings to phase 2 of 12 and 14 unit buildings, there's some continuity from one phase to the next, not just in terms of the landscaping, but the architecture as well, to the extent that that's possible. So that's not just some hodgepodge, 30 years from now, it's these individual neighborhoods within a larger neighborhood.
Which would all take place during, the SIP plan part.
So you have like a planned development district implementation plan from another one of your projects that you would take off the shelf and use to modify for this purpose?
So I normally don't do that. I have some consultants that do that for me. So I would get those guys and they would come in and we would get that drawn up.
You want one as a draft to look at and say, yeah, this could work? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
I can find some from other municipalities. I know we did some in Stoughton, and we did GDPs and SIPs. We call them GDPs down there, but SIPs, and where basically you just come in and you just tell what's going to go on each lot, 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, whatever. And then those lots are either sold or the developer develops them. Then he has to bring in the actual plans and development, and they all have to meet the developer's agreement and then meet your guys' agreement as well.
Right, and that's what I want to make sure is that our base agreement, requires a certain level of quality, if you will, that we can rest assured will be maintained going forward. Now, with that said, I know what happens. It happened with Blackstone Creek. Time is what it is, and then all of a sudden, before you get to the next phase, the economy's taken a turn and time passes and all of a sudden there's a request to amend it to, take out this feature or water down that. And that's always a risk, but
With such a big development, yes.
So I guess out of the discussion so far, the 105 units are felt not to be a fit in this area. Person standing by the podium had said that that could be removed, but did you say you would put 4 30 units or 8 30 units in replacement?
I'd have to take a look at it and see what we can get. It just depends on, are you guys gonna allow us to go to the 10 units per acre like the comp plan says? Or are we gonna be restricted at 2 units per acre or 6?
Is the break point, but is the projection for this area around 600 units?
That's what that's what the owners would like. That's what the comp plan says.
Mhm.
well, let's just go right to the top, right?
No, we gotta start somewhere.
Well, I'm just thinking of,
Put somewhere, I think 600 is pushing it.
I'm
Okay, well,
looking at
that's-
600 placements in there, and let's just call it 1,200 people, just for simple math, because that's who I am, simple math, man.
Late.
Yeah, and I'm not in that. But the pressure on 145 and Mequon on that intersection seems heavy. The roundabout is a racetrack now, I mean, in the mornings.
Yeah.
But it is anyways, somewhat. It just seems a lot of pressure all of a sudden in that area.
Yeah.
There's an uncontrolled railroad track down Country Air a little bit further. And that road is passable. It's a tough road. It would need to be improved. The intersection, once you get to Mequon, that's already had its improvements done and it's pretty well expanded out. It's just the road to get there is difficult. Not only for expanding because there's a fair amount of residential there, but there's also that railroad, that double track that runs through there that would limit the amount of width you could put on that road. But it would need to be improved either way. So there'd be a lot of auxiliary improvements that we would have to consider as this gets phased in based on the pressure points of everybody going to and from
Right.
this area on any given day of 600 plus units. So I'm not saying no, it's just part of the plan of looking at as you phase it in. I agree with David in the sense of the four story 100 units. It's too far out, and it's not a good place for it. It's all those that are built around in Fitchburg or in Verona or in Middleton or in Stoughton, they're closer to a lot of the stores, amenities, the areas that people want to get to. They're not kind of out on the outskirts where this is for us. And we've put some multifamily out here along 145, but not the pressure this one's going to bring in an intense development of this size. So I wouldn't want to see those 4 stories out there either. I'd want to look at something that's more conducive to a neighborhood a transitional neighborhood, but it's got to have that community feel to it, to where, like Planner Retzloff said, I don't want to know what year or be able to tell what year each one was built simply because it was 5 years later. It'd have to have continuity. That'd have to be part of the developer's agreement and part of the understanding of how it would look when it's totally built out for that neighborhood feel. The commercial side of it, that could be anything. I mean, that could be, it could be a restaurant to a funeral home, or it could be a restaurant funeral home. Either way, you could see
But that's on village property?
part of it's
Just
our
a
property.
portion of it.
We own where a sign used to be
Yeah,
when they took the roundabout.
we got the front half of it,
Mhm.
south half.
Yeah,
of it.
we own 1 acre right at the intersection.
Yeah.
Yeah, just this.
Yeah.
So that's just some of the comments I have. Mr. Tarantino.
Just out of curiosity, obviously it's hard, you can't predict how many kids would live there, but do you know what elementary school that is?
It could be split between County Line and MacArthur.
And then are those sidewalks around, if the road is proposed to be public, so
Mhm.
obviously the village would remove snow off of it and maintain it, then are those sidewalks around it as
Yep.
well? So is that, would Germantown have to clear the sidewalks, the ones that parallel the road?
That would be up for discussion. I mean, they're proposing public road. Again, that's all part of the discussion going forward. Right now, we're looking at a conceptual for density and use. To get into those details would be more later down the road, but it would be a worthwhile discussion because that's what we currently do.
Need a whole nother crew.
Yeah, I think there's got to be some trade-off with the amount of the density allowance. You know, some level of homeowner association responsibility for some of these amenities that,
But it would definitely need the HOA if you have your community center and those parklands in between. It would need some sort of fund to keep it up and current.
Does the village of Germantown actually clear the sidewalks?
Shh.
yeah.
Really? Okay.
We clear the pathways, the asphalt pathways, and we also clear the sidewalks along
I'd
Mequon.
have to talk to him, but I think something like that could be negotiated out.
Jeff, can you go back to the existing aerial, the vacant land? Which way does this lot pitch?
Down towards the school.
So it all goes, pitches down to the south.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So everything on the top half are 2 stories, and then the lower half is where we put the higher stories, because in height difference, you would not see the 4 stories at all.
Coming from the north? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'd like to see that in a visual.
Would it be, you know, again, I'm not supporting residential, but if we're going residential, would it not be better to have your lower density to the west side of the site and your higher density to the east side of the site?
Yeah, if you're looking for that sort of step down in intensity and buffering, if you will.
Yeah, that's what I was contemplating.
Along Fond du Lac Avenue, you've got going from left to right along the top. You've got the commercial area near the intersection.
Right.
Then you've got is it 28 unit?
14
building?
units. Oh, the 228 units?
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be 3 stories, first floor commercial, depending on what, they could be either or. We could either do commercial or residential.
Now, is that
Yeah.
one of these site plans that I've got here that's got 28 units? I only see go from 14 to
That
42.
one's a 42, but that's just bigger.
Just cut in half.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is essentially the same as.
Right, that's an all residential building, so commercial one would have, the first floor would be more glass and be like.
That's showing a sloped roof. What you were showing earlier that was flat, right?
Okay, yeah, so that's what I was saying, this 3-story is actually shorter than the 4-story. The flat roof on the 4 stories.
I mean, the 4 stories shorter than the.
It's got 4 stories shorter than the 3-story. So if
Okay.
you're looking at the roof pitch actually comes up a couple feet higher.
There's a lot of that there. Those 4 stories, they're all the way through.
So,
Madison.
and I mean, we could, working with architecture too, so some of these by the road, we could go with flat roofs on these too, which would lower the roof pitch by 10 feet,
Right.
which is what we did up in Terravesa.
Did we learn anything from Saxony Village? The original proposal was for flat roofs,
On a 2-story building.
a 2-story
3.
building,
There was a 3-story in the beginning.
Yes.
like
On
2.5.
a 3-story building, the flat roof looked okay. When it got down to a 2-story building, the flat roof looked terrible.
I've never put a flat roof on a 2-story.
So with this 3-story, this looks old to me.
Yes.
This doesn't look contemporary
Well, that,
relative to this.
Right. So I gave you a montage of everything. I mean, the architecture can be changed or do whatever, but so if you go to different areas, I've done 24, 48 units with the flat roofs that look more like the 105 units. which look more modern with the overhangs and
Is that what you're looking for? Is modern? Are you looking for value conscious? Are you looking for a stylized building? What, go over to Mequon, the new developments in Mequon. They're traditional in style. Are you looking for traditional in style? Are you looking for contemporary traditional? Are you looking for straight contemporary that you see downtown along the river? Those apartment buildings, which are just giant boxes of,
Look like freighters.
yes. That's
I'm
why.
afraid to answer your question, David. Because I'm thinking contemporary, yes, but I know that you're not all in favor of those sort of designs, the boxy looking stuff for out here.
Well, there's a mix of this type in that area. I mean, they just built I bet you it's 100 unit in Oregon, right off of MM on the further end of the second exit of MM in Oregon.
yeah, right by the Quick Trip there.
Right. They took the Quick Trip,
Yeah.
moved it across the road, built
That's a
it big, and then they put a big.
3-story with a flat roof. Yeah, I mean, if you go out to the west side of Madison and Sun Prairie, I mean, a lot of them, this is by far the least expensive way you can build a building. The next is putting the flat roof on it and doing most of those guys over there, they're doing the flat panels, stuff like that, and that gets more expensive. So, but everything is negotiated and, we can talk about that in design concepts.
Now we're looking at overall concept and density.
What kind of prices, rents are you getting in these other places you mentioned out near Madison?
An efficiency is like 1,000 to 1,100, and then the 3-bedroom, 2,500 square foot ones are 2,800, 2,900. So the thing is, what we try to do is we try to get different units so people can, if they want to pay $50 more, they can have a bigger living room. If they want to pay $200 more, they can have a second bedroom, and then they can go and do what they want and try to fit their needs the best.
And I assume the higher the unit count per building is a guarantee. Those are all rentals.
Not necessarily. This building here they're all condos.
So what is the breakdown? Would that sway anybody's opinion on this density of development in this area? If it's 10% rental, 50% rental, 100% rental, that change anybody's mind?
Percentage of ownership being higher is always more appealing.
That's what we've always heard. When developers come forward, they're looking for something that's, owner occupied.
Aesthetically, though, it's still the same, more or less. So that was my initial hang up with it. It's just the overall density and the aesthetics.
Yeah, right, I'm just asking the question, if you were to know that it's owner occupied as opposed to rental property, would that change your mindset? For me, no, it doesn't. I've got enough hangups with what I see that.
So based on the 600 unit, Jeff, that's beyond what would be normal for an acreage of this site
Well,
per unit. So that's why you'd go out to a PUD or a PDD?
it would have to be, yes. Although we'd have to take a closer look at it because we do have the multifamily zoning districts that allow 6, 8, and 10 units per acre that arguably could be utilized, but they're kind of rigid in terms of what they require in terms of size of rooms. And what I'm hearing is in order to be more flexible and to reflect what's coming out of the market analysis, that's another area that we need to look at and possibly change. And that is the minimum dwelling unit size or number of bedrooms that are allowed in a dwelling unit. I mean, right now, the absolute minimum, other than in the multifamily area, is 1,200 square feet in any of the single family districts. And so how do we accommodate a attached townhouse, single family that we're trying to, get developed that's for sale when our own market guru is telling us that they should be 600 square feet, 700 square feet, up to 1,100 square feet per unit. So we'd have to tweak some of those restrictions as well.
Mhm.
But as far as the overall density, we're sort of in the ballpark with what we currently have. It just it would be better to accommodate it in a PDD where we can be more flexible in how the density is shifted around the property, particularly when we start talking about, phasing. Here was the phasing plan, ignore the concept behind it, but this is what was presented last May in terms of phasing, where they were going to start over on the right along Country Air and Fond du Lac with phase one. And then phase 1A and B, and then where's phase 3? Everything was along Fond du Lac right away, or phase 2 was in the back along the railroad. I don't know if that's all subject to change, right?
No, I'm sure it's going to change a little bit because what we'd want to do is we'd want to get the circulation route established right away. So coming off of Fond du Lac and going on to Dodgers Bay would be the first thing. So we could get 2 exits and out of it till we can, for fire department and police. And then, but just a quick design feature. The way I laid it out was, the heavier on the south end, because that allowed me to keep the 6 and 8 acre park on the north end, plus having the individual park areas for the 6 and 4s and 2s. I mean, that allowed me to spread those out farther. Otherwise, if you were going to do the 6 to 8 units per acre and take off the bigger buildings, then I would have to push those 6 and 8s closer together and get rid of the green space between them, because otherwise I couldn't get the density that they want.
I'd like to hear the commissioner's opinion on the density proposed.
I think it's too dense.
Mr. Shadid.
I can't get my arms around the larger units. We've watched this, I think, 3 or 4 times. We've seen this develop. I never really liked the idea of this much density in Germantown. Maybe that's something I have to get over. I'm not sure. But the 105 units just seem way out of place. I don't know how you approached it when you were talking about, you got some Mormon fuzzies when you first saw the drawing. Now, I kind of did too, but I didn't realize it was 105 units there. I can't picture in my community apartments with a 4-story parking garage. I just can't get around that.
The north end.
Pardon?
The north end gave me the warm and fuzzies because.
Yes, I don't mind. I am accepting that. I don't really, in my life, I've gotten beyond wanting to live like that. Now, see, when I say that, it sounds like, okay, well, what are you thinking? But that's my opinion. But I can't accept that the south end. Just can't.
What was Jeff, do you remember what the proposed child per unit was for Saxony Village? Was it 1.2?
I do not remember.
Okay.
Wait a minute, what was your question?
I know it's probably lower than that now.
0.8?
Well, and when we were talking with Atlantan and County Line.
Yeah.
The fiduciary.
Yeah.
They provided some information that they claimed to be, actual student counts from similar projects were worked out to be like on average, half a student per unit or something.
I was
like
thinking 0.75.
From what I've seen in the Madison area and Fitchburg and all that stuff, it's like right around 0.45, 0.42 kids per household.
If you didn't do the big 105 unit buildings on the end, you broke them up like you were saying, if you did 30 family units, then where would they park? If you had to.
They all have underground parking.
It would still work.
Even the 36 units and the 42s, each building, each unit has one underground stall. So usually we design them for 1.5 units, stalls per unit. So we put half of them outside or a third outside and 2/3 inside. Well,
Even the duplexes have underground parking?
the duplexes all have garages.
Yeah, okay.
So all the duplexes proposed here, all have two-car garages, 2 out and 2 in. So they have 4 stalls per.
I apologize if you said this already, but can you tell me how long of a project timeline you'd be talking from?
Can you turn your mic on?
Sorry, what, from start to finish, what would you, or how long of a process does this normally take to fully develop?
If you go talk to the Fed board and drop the rates, it'll be faster. But 5 to 10 years.
5 to 10 years from start to finish.
Yeah. So, and then we really didn't talk about the senior housing, you know, over 60, over 55 and all that stuff. So basically everything on the right side or the north side, the 4s, except for we have some ranch units, those would be accessible, but all the larger buildings all have elevators and are all accessible. So they're perfect for seniors.
But you're not looking for that as it's not a 55 and older.
No.
Okay.
But the majority of the ones, I mean, I can get you some rental stats from different places that I've designed and we can look at it.
Commissioners, your thoughts? Still interested in thoughts on density? Too much, too little? Mr. Nils?
I guess I'm uncomfortable at the moment with the amount of density in general, but I think it's something we need to figure out how to deal with. And how to make it work somewhere. And this might not be the right location for that type of density, but yeah, I just agree that we need to figure out the right place to have that type of density.
All right, so based on, we know trustee Baum doesn't like, I'm gonna say doesn't feel that that residential is a good fit for this area. Do the other commissioners have any thoughts on that? I mean, do you feel it should be proposed as something else, or do you feel that residential is a good use for this land?
Well, I didn't have a problem with residential there, maybe as much as David did, but my problem is the density on the south end again, but I don't have a problem with where it's located.
Okay. Mr.
Maybe it's because I
Tarantino.
have kids in school, but I always go back to that. Like, I know you've said before, maybe we could get somebody from the school board here to listen to these before they get upset with the decision that was made. But I mean, we have room for 300 kids, 100 more kids? I mean, my child's school had to have a special meeting to create another daycare, kindergarten class. But like figure out who the teacher would be and like figure out when it could be. And that's just for 13 kids.
That's a
So, I
good
mean,
question.
That's just something I always think about.
Consideration.
I
Steve here earlier, is he still here?
I think the answer we would be given
No,
is
he was
that,
at the school
that
board.
no, there isn't. That's changing.
Yeah.
It's just how quickly things change. It remains to be seen. As an aside, we have extended an offer for a school board member
I know.
to sit.
I understand that.
And I don't know what the status of that is, but the offer's been extended. And to the extent that we don't have somebody, the current arrangement is we send our plan commission stuff packet, just like you get, to the district administrator to distribute to whomever.
Yeah.
And the village administrator provides updates to the district administrator as well. They have cadence meetings that they have, whether it's once a quarter or whatever. It's just going through those current changes or developments.
Yeah, I just find it hard to make an actual decision on if 600 units is too dense if we don't know that all the other ancillary things that are needed to support it can support it.
It's 5,000 over the next 5 years.
That's impossible.
For
wouldn't
that,
work.
not within the borders of Germantown. So
Well, you never know.
Need another
to it 600 at a time. Mr. Lashewski.
Last time, I think, David, you sketched out kind of an industrial look. I mean, again, for highest and best use, I mean, it was a continuation of the business park. There's some merit to that. It's on the other side of the tracks and whatnot, but
And up high.
it's hard.
It's up higher.
It is up higher. Yes, definitely.
It's a good,
Um,
there's a good ridge there that's higher than anything that's in the business park below it.
mhm.
And there is a school there. We don't want it surrounded with industrial.
Well, there's
It's not a
administration
school,
building.
it's a building.
Administration.
Right. Yeah, no, it's, I mean, you got the railroad tracks.
They have room for expansion, yeah.
I can drop another concept. I do enough of those.
Yeah, but right now the proposal for discussion is a residential.
Yeah.
And that's what the development group is coming forward to this body to get our comments and our discussion points out on what's being proposed, which is Arbor Village. So, I mean, if you have an issue with density, if you have an issue with building size, if you have an issue with the number of condominiums versus rentals, now is the time to kind of let that be known.
I do like the idea of flip-flopping the higher density along Fond du Lac further east.
Along the railroad track.
Yeah, along the railroad tracks.
So you have a step down
You got
in
the-
density from the railroad tracks being very dense to along the street being less dense, which would then maybe tie in with what we got west of.
Right.
You
Right.
lose all your commercial aspect then of those bigger buildings than on the first and the second two.
Totally opposite of what's in front of you.
I know.
And you prefer, why?
Why?
Is there any commercial aspect to those buildings that face Fond du Lac? That's all residential, correct?
These two are ground floor residential or ground floor commercial.
On Fond du Lac, yeah.
That's the only two.
It's, well, that and the commercial side.
Right. In the community center, does it make sense to have the community center up towards the entrance? Aren't they usually centrally located?
Got another building in there too.
You know, one of the things we heard from fiduciary on that county line project was they wanted their community center to be visible
Oh, yeah. It's a draw,
from the public way as a draw.
right? You're right.
That had a pool and an outdoor eatings kind of area. This is just a building.
Placeholder.
Place.
All right, for now, right?
Yeah.
Other comments? Questions? Opinions? We know yours.
I know. I've been vocal.
Nothing else? Anything else for us?
Well,
Did you get what you wanted? I don't think so.
Oh, what we would like to do is, be able to work direct with staff, engineering and, maybe reduce. Now, after we heard the comments, reduce some of the buildings, we can redesign some of those, maybe change the density a little bit and then.
We've thrown out terms like some are condominium units, some are, single family owned, whatever. If we could deal with some percentages of what is to what is not, I think
There's no
that,
single family in here.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
as a side by side or a 6-unit owned, that would be interesting to me. Some sort of, what you would put in replace of the 100 unit that is really kind of what you've heard here. Most of the commissioners don't feel it's a fit for this area, both of those 105 unit. So what would be in its place? What would that look like? And then Trustee Baum's view of having higher density to the back and then, lower density to the front. If you don't agree with that, then, the reasons as to why you don't agree with that based on other developments that you've had or experienced or have built.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult because of the road situation and all the stormwater flows that way. So we have to use that as a retention area. So it eats up a lot of our space. And we'd have to push the road way up in order to get any development there, or we'd have to put the development on the west side of the road.
Nothing. Anything else?
I think you need to replace those two 105 unit buildings with something that makes this a destination neighborhood. I don't know what it is though.
Okay. Yeah, we can
I
do
don't know
that.
if it's an active park and the wood area on the north is just a passive area.
Mr. Shadid, did you have something?
Yeah, I was gonna say that, You mentioned before you had some examples of these locations. You mentioned you're gonna drive by one over toward Madison. I'd actually like to know where some of those are. And the reason for asking that is I was really not in favor of Saxony Village when we did it.
Mhm.
But I have to say that when I drive through there now, I wish I'd have seen it before, something like it before they built it.
I can email Jeff some addresses.
I think that would be good.
Yep.
Maybe we need to, maybe in my case, I need to broaden my mind a little bit. I don't know. But
Mhm.
I'd like to give it a try, even if it's clear to Madison.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a ton in the Madison, DeForest, Cottage Grove area.
I think you had several examples. All those would be great.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask one last question?
Sure.
Is there an expectation that there's going to be some financial assistance from the village on this?
Well, we would like to investigate that, especially for the roads and the entrances and the right of way. As also for the paths, the pedestrian paths, you know, they get quite expensive. I mean, that one there is a mile long, so or mile and a half long.
The paths will be all public?
Yeah. So we have to work that out then too, because most of the places I work at, do work at it, I mean, they have to actually donate that to the public. You know, donate that land and then do whatever, so that would all have to be worked out if that's just an easement or if that's a dedication.
Some people may question the proximity to the business park, but as you go out around Madison, Bill, you're gonna see that there are these types of developments right on the edges of many business parks. They're the transitional units from one to the other. In fact, they'll run it from the larger multifamilies straight against the business park to single-family neighborhoods of very small lots and smaller houses that a lot of that community out there desires because they don't want the maintenance. And some of those are all controlled by a full HOA where they're not even cutting their own grass. They have kind of a condominium association that handles all the landscaping for them.
One last thing, is it possible for you to put together some kind of projection of school-age children, given the mix of units?
I can see what I can do.
Anything else, commissioners? Nothing else? Anything else for us?
Again, would it be, can we work with staff and
Yeah.
refine this and
Yes.
try to get it done, you know? I mean, most of the stuff we talked about, except for putting industrial there, is pretty easy to do. And we can get that together.
Yeah, it's work with Jeff and see what, you know, what you want to change or what the new look would be with the minus 105 units. You've heard some hesitation, I would put it, on the amount of density. So in knowing that you would, you know, I'm sure that this commission could represent or a percentage of the populace that would also possibly not agree with that amount of density in this area too, that would come forward to discuss. So just, you know, take that into consideration as of how hard and firm 600 units is, or what that range could look like if it's not 600. So that we could see different visualizations of that. I think when you're talking about owner occupied, I think that is a more acceptable idea for some of these units, knowing that the larger ones probably aren't, but what percentage of that would be considered owner occupied versus a total is always an interesting statistic to share, and helps you know, those that are on the fence decide that they like it because there is that percentage of it, or are just against it based on density only.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you
Yep.
for coming and presenting this to us and listening to us on this. Next item under new business is item G, Village of Germantown, ownership transfer of a 51.6 acre parcel from the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewer District for trail system and open space conservation. More information, background on this new business item. Once again, we'll turn it over to Director Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As many of you are aware, the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District has a program called the Green Seams Program, where they acquire land and or rights for development from properties in flood-prone areas, abutting and within watershed areas, including the village of Germantown. They have acquired a number of properties in Germantown, and as part of their program, they agree to transfer the ownership of those parcels to the municipality, subject to certain restrictions on how that land can be used going forward. And in some cases, the uses that are allowed are a function of what money has been used to fund the acquisition from MMSD. For example, stewardship funds made available from the DNR through that program have significant restrictions on how land can be used for public purposes, has to be accessible, and can't necessarily have significant amounts of developed features, but do accommodate parking areas or trails, things of that nature that are low impact, depending upon what's proposed. In this case, the village is reaching out to MMSD and has requested the transfer of ownership of a 51.6 acre parcel located near Holy Hill Road, the vicinity of the proposed frontage road from Holy Hill down to Freistadt. It's highlighted in red on the screen. It was a parcel of land that was created back in 2013. MLG represented the owners and had an ownership interest in the land, and they divided into three pieces. One piece eventually has become the Capstone 41 Business Park that you can see under development on this aerial photograph. That was a 52.5 acre parcel. The second parcel created is the one we're talking about, the 51 acre parcel in the middle that has a significant amount of wetland and environmental feature to it. And then a 10 acre piece that's located in the northwest corner. You can see it there right at Holy Hill and right across from that storage facility just east of the interchange. That parcel is currently owned by MLG, and they're holding it for future land use. Highway-oriented commercial uses are likely to be what they propose somewhere down the road.
How big is that?
Pardon me?
10 acres? Okay.
10 acres.
All
Last year, the village and MMSD entered into an intergovernmental cooperation agreement to lay out the process and responsibilities for transferring parcels from MMSD to the village under the Green Seams program. And with that in place, now the village has requested the transfer of this 51.6 acre parcel for purposes of trail development and open space conservation. As you can see in this graphic, the parcel contains a significant amount of wetland, but the area close to the railroad outside of the wetland area is high ground. And from what I understand, the property is a very beautiful piece of property with some nice views and environmental features that will be enhanced as part of the trail development plan for the Goldendale Creek Trail that is shown on these graphics, prepared for the village as part of the trail plan recently adopted. What's before you this evening is a requirement under state statute that before the village acquires property, that they get a recommendation from the Plan Commission. And that is what is being asked of you this evening. The staff recommendation to you is to recommend approval of the acquisition or the transfer of ownership from MMSD to the village for this particular property. The one secondary benefit that's most immediate to be felt is the fact that given ownership by the village, we're in a better position to set aside the right-of-way necessary for the balance of what's required for the future frontage road from Holy Hill down to the railroad track. But principally, and long-term, the use for trail and open space conservation purposes is the ultimate goal, as part of the open space outdoor recreation plan for the village. So with that, again, staff recommendation is to recommend approval of the ownership transfer and acquisition of the property by the village.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented for discussion.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on a motion to approve. Mr. Leshewski.
You guys heard this story before, but when I was on Park and Rec, we toured these properties, we talked to MMSD, and they were absolutely militant about what we couldn't do with these properties. If you wanted a trail, it had to be like wood chips. If you had they're limited on the parking, because obviously if you got to, have some parking for people to enjoy it unless they walk there. Can we put a fence around it? No, you can't put a fence around it. What plants can we put here? Well, you can put anything you want as long as it's on this list. I guess, so when I look at this and say, I wouldn't take ownership of this because in theory, it's a liability. I mean, it could be 59 or whatever acres of buckthorn until everything is approved by MMSD. And once everything is approved and they've blessed it and it's in writing, then I would say, yes, transfer the land. I understand there's other reasons for doing this, but that's my sense is what they were very obstinate about limiting what we could do with these. I understand what you said, Jeff. I don't remember. We didn't view this property. This wasn't one of them. But I just was taken aback about how, yeah, here you can have this property, but you can't do anything with it. I mean, literally, you couldn't do anything with it. You couldn't put a fence, a cedar fence in it. It's like, why would we want these?
I agree with you. When I
So-
first started here with the village, that was the attitude.
Mhm.
And the position of the board at that time was, under previous administration, if you will, was we don't want any of these properties.
Yeah.
We don't want them to come off the tax roll, even though they weren't generating taxes given MMSD ownership in the first place. But with that said, it's fair to say that the management of the program and the leadership at MMSD for this sort of thing has changed and changed dramatically. I've been part of a number of meetings with the folks that were responsible for acquiring land, and they're very eager to see these sorts of developments take place on these properties. When I say developments, I mean the development of the trail system, the environmental signage, the enhancement for stormwater management, and things of that nature. I mean, this is being discussed as a trailhead as part of the overall trail plan for the village. For a critical part, and frankly, the first piece of that trail system, developing the Goldendale Creek Trail. So I do share your concerns. I would say though that this transfer of ownership and this particular plan is being presented to MMSD. I think it's either this week or next week.
I thought it was this week.
Yeah, I think you're right. Where they're going to be considering the very same thing and looking at what we're proposing and deciding whether we're worthy enough to accept, the property, given what we're proposing to do with it. I think it's a dramatic difference than what it used to be.
I just think you got essentially one buyer and one seller. And once they sell you the property, so to speak, and we take acceptance of it, any motivation to deal with us as a village just kind of goes away. They've accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. They got I don't know what pressures they're under to divest land holdings or whatever. It's great to see that they're kind of had a shift in how they want to work with the village, because back then they didn't want to work with us at all. Because whatever. So again, from a motivational standpoint, once they accomplish what they want to accomplish, then all of a sudden, well, no, you can't do that. No. So yeah, I'm a bit cynical based on that. This was 10 years ago, but still.
No, I get it. Is there something more that you'd like to see in terms of documentation or assurance that they're not going to revert back to their militant position and
I just remember that, again, there were the conservation easements and such. And I just don't remember, like, again, what essentially, what would they do if we put a fence there and they said we couldn't put a fence there, right? They'd take you to court, I guess, and slap an injunction or whatever, and you got to remove the fence. So I would just like to see them say, yes, what you're proposing is fine based on how we interpret the conservation easement. We'll put language in our whatever the deed or the right
Agreement.
warranty deed, so that everything is locked down and documented what we can do with it before somebody disputes or interprets it some other way with a regime change.
They have this in front of them now, correct? As it is, as we see it, this is what we've proposed to them for uses in this area. So you can see that there's a parking lot for the entranceway. The pathway is up on the upper portion of it. Overlooks some additional stormwater features. But I think we've also outlined what type of uses we'd like to see this and have plans for this to go and connect up to possible other opportunities we have for land all the way to Maple Road. I mean, that's where it's going to be connecting up to. My understanding of this particular property, if there's two headwaters to minor waterways here.
Yeah, you can see it on the drawing here. Through the north, south, central, there's the Little Cedar Creek tributary that heads from the south, that drains from the south to the north, goes underneath Holy Hill Road and towards the interchange, and eventually connects back to Cedar Creek up in the town of Jackson and beyond. And eventually connects into the Milwaukee River, so the Milwaukee River watershed. And then on the southeastern part of this parcel, it's the Goldendale Creek, a tributary that eventually goes under Goldendale Road and finds its way to the Menominee River.
Menominee River, which touches the
watershed.
lake.
So it's a really interesting property from that perspective. But granted,
The other thing was there were other constituents out there. I think it was the River Keepers or somebody like that. Remember, we wanted to log the Germantown swamp up by the park up there? And, sudden next thing you know, we got an award that congratulations, the Germantown swamp is a pristine wilderness. And all of a sudden it's like, well, why do you want to log the wilderness? Right? So they self-designated this thing as a wilderness, as this gem. And then they used that to beat us over the head for trying to log the gem. Right? So it's not just MMSD, it's all these other constituents. And if this is the headwaters, you're going to be on their radar screen. So again, I just urge maximum caution because there's so many political constituencies here beyond MMSD. I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot about that group.
But I think what's important as part of this consideration is that it is the start of that recreational path plan. And we have a plan, and this is this actual property and the amenities that we put to it. Monies have been designated from the TIF to help support it. And it was all the way back when that TIF was created. It's not just recently. TIF was created with those monies available for that purpose. So they're more than aware of what our plan is for that. And they have what we're showing here. So they know that there's a possibility of an observation deck. They know what an overlook looks like in regards to what our vision of it is, what we'd like to see for educational signage. So we're not hiding anything of how we want to use this. And so far, they haven't said really flat no to any of it. So as part of their approval on their board, as this is proposed with all of these types of uses to it, if they give us an approval and we have that agreement in writing, to me that should be enough to keep it in that use for as long as we want it to be in that use, as long as it's used going forward. That's the agreement that it was turned over us using this use in this area with these types of amenities for long-term connectivity to other trails that are a little bit further down the line, to help to actually put into practice the pathway and recreational path that we've talked about for a long time, and now at least have a plan to work from. This is that starting point that you gotta have that kickoff. To me, that's that kickoff. That's why it's important
And
to
that's
me.
what we tried to articulate to them 10 years ago.
I know, but that's why it's important to me. And if,
Telling you.
if they're open to this, then maybe they'll, and see the success of this, maybe they'll be more open to open those properties up around Wilderness Park and
That
have
was the
those
idea,
for,
right.
for the uses that they said we could have them, as well. So, again, this is important for two reasons to me. It's the start of that recreational path that we've always talked about, have a plan for, and this helps initiate. And secondly, through the success of this, other lands that are out there, and there's many, and there's large tracts. In fact, Wilderness Park, we're the donut hole in what's all the way around it, owned by MMSD. So, there's opportunity for other recreational sites out in that area too.
And that's what we thought was our ticket to access that park. Was,
We've been talking about that park for as long as I've been on this board.
We just go in. We just go in it.
I mean, they were getting angry when people were mowing their own paths through that park.
right.
But this is a good starting point. This actually shows the seriousness of what we want for our recreational paths and institutes that first leg.
I mean, if you're willing to recommend approval to the village board that they acquire it subject to, getting documentation that,
I think the village board has the same sentiment.
yeah.
I've been at it long enough and I'm still in the same boat that he's in, so I'll vocalize it at the next board meeting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Further discussion, Mr. Shattuck.
Just out of curiosity here, if I get this to work. Under point 18, under funding, is the funding involved here strictly, we each file our own paperwork and all that kind of stuff? Is there any money trade changes hands for the property itself? Or is it just a handover?
That I do not know.
I don't think we're not buying it.
Okay, that's basically my
Yeah,
question.
it's just I think it's just a transfer of ownership. We're not,
Yeah.
maybe $1 for legal documentation purposes. I don't know.
I haven't seen anything that lists any costs that are incurred with the transfer of property.
I didn't see anything here either, so I just wanted to check.
And if there is, then it needs to be brought before the board too, because that's something they would have to improve. And we would have to have that understanding that there is that cost to it, as our recommendation would go to the board. Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One opposed? Motion carries. Takes care of all items listed on tonight's agenda under new business, which then brings us to citizen input and public appearance. On items not subject to a public hearing, there were no public hearings on tonight's agenda. If there is anyone within our audience or are joining us via WebEx that would like to participate in citizen input or public appearance, you're welcome to do so at this time. I would just ask you, if you're within our audience, to come to the podium and state your name and your address for the record. And if you are joining us via WebEx, please let the moderator know your wishes so that you can be recognized and present your information.
Hi,
Hi.
Sarah Larson. I apologize, I didn't bring paper, and so putting these notes on here, it's going to be a little scattered. So this is going to be kind of in no particular order. First and foremost, that housing study by Tracy Cross, I thought that was a ridiculous waste of $30,000 of county money. You could have engaged a real estate professional that could have given you the same information and probably would have done it for gratis if they could have gotten in on the real estate deals to follow. And I think it had very poor math. The math doesn't work on this. If you are saying that the affordability is based on 50 to 150% of the median income, do you realize that someone earning 55,000 wouldn't be able to buy anything? Because when you're looking at the debt to income ratio, $1,600 would be their mortgage threshold. And the pricing there is $1,370 to $2,185. Are we saying that anyone who's going to buy there doesn't own a car or have some sort of credit card debt or anything like that? These numbers are just ridiculous. And I think, when we're looking and thinking that 250 and above is affordable, and that the number of people interested in under 250 is so small. That number is small because we don't have that available. If we had true affordable housing in our community, you would see that number under 250,000 a lot higher. And in listening to this discussion surrounding the gentleman that wanted to develop behind the school district office, there's a segment of this group that I feel has some underlying agenda or not on the same page here, because to say more industrial, but yet then talk about the aesthetics and architectural pleasing of this community. We have so much ugly industrial in our community. And then to say, put this by the city center. What is our city center? We don't have amenities in our city center. Is Mequon Road our city center? And let me tell you, Mequon Road is not architecturally pleasing. It looks old and dowdy. You know, if you're saying, oh, let's get 20 to 40-year-old people wanting to come to Germantown, Mequon Road isn't what someone in that age bracket wants. And I just, I question this, and the whole discussion is, you start by saying, well, we need next gen housing. Then someone comes to present it, and you're like, oh, nope, it has this and this. And it's kind of then that NIMBY, not in my backyard, is the impression I got. Oh, let's put it out on the edge of the district. So if it turns into a trailer park, it's not going to infect the rest of the community. It just, a lot of contrary commentary that could be construed so many different ways. I'm just aghast by the discussion, and maybe how about we look at trying to get some businesses to come to Germantown where people want to stay and spend their money in the community. There is no nightlife attraction. We've got pubs. We need some good restaurants. We need some entertainment. Maybe if you put those infrastructure things in place and make it desirable for people to want to come and do business in the community, other than just put up a big ugly factory, those things go hand in hand. People want to be able to truly live in their community and shop and patronize those places. So, thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance? Yes, sir.
Neil Rissler on Harrison Circle. I wanted to talk a little bit about Arbor Village. As some of you know, I'm not a fan of it because I look at the density, and I think the density well outstrips the infrastructure that's there. As Administrator Retzloff had mentioned in his discussion about the planning report, development based on infrastructure. If you look at that development and the two main roads that abut that area, one is Dodgers Bay Road, the other is Fond du Lac Avenue. Fond du Lac Avenue and Dodgers Bay Road are both two-lane roads. You're talking an additional 600 to 900 cars on those roads on any given day, along with what's already there from the business, the industrial park and other businesses in the area. I see that the areas around it, primarily the areas to the east, to the south, and somewhat to the west, are commercial. I really think that that would be best served as an industrial location. And I sort of disagree with the last lady who spoke. I think the industrial parks in Germantown are well designed and well laid out. I think they've done a good job. Not everyone is perfect, but I think in the whole, they are well designed, et cetera. I don't think they are a blight to the community. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance? What you got?
Good evening. I'm Jan Miller, W151 N10297 Winsong Circle West. Got it memorized? No. Okay, first, I'd like to talk about the Tracy Cross Next Generation study. Where is Eric? Come on. He put together a 45-page dissertation about this market study. He hasn't showed up. You put it on the agenda. He had plenty of time to show up, and he wasn't here for the joint. Eric from Tracy Cross. He wasn't here live. That's my point.
Oh,
So if you have a next meeting, please have him show up so that he can actually speak to questions that come up. That's what I would appreciate. And my other comment about it is, first of all, we asked Tracy Cross to do this study because Washington County paid for this study, $20,000, maybe it's 30, I'm not sure, but it's at least $20,000. So this study was subsidized by Washington County. Washington County started the Next Generation Housing. Jeff is an alternate on the Washington County Next Generation Housing Committee. Mr. Krecklow, our administrator, is on the Washington County Next Generation Housing Committee. And for us, for the study to say, it did seem lopsided. We don't have any criteria that kind of fits it. I feel like we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So there are opportunities for growth, but if you look at the 2050 plan, the growth in this community in Germantown by itself is supposed to be 0.75 to 1% growth per capita, you know, going forward in the next 5 years. So we don't have a lot of and the report has some corrections or updates in it from the first one that we saw, but it was not clearly identified. So if you make corrections to a big document like that, you should either highlight it or, you know, put it in a different color. I didn't know where to go to find any of the corrections. The village of Germantown does not own any property. We're on some of those sites where they're saying, oh, this would be a good idea to put next generation housing. The actual plots that have been on the list for next generation housing have been the Grossnick properties, the small one and the 5-point-some acres. It's in the minutes for the Washington County Next Generation Housing, and that's been on the list for probably 2 years. The plan in Jackson, Wisconsin is because the village of Jackson owns the property, and that's how they're able to make it work. So I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same, you know, page. And please look up Washington County Next Generation Housing. Thank you.
thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance?
Good evening, Melanie Smythe, N140W17938 Cedar Lane. There's a little bit of a confusion. At a couple of meetings, the administration mentioned something about a Vanderwall study, and I emailed with Director Retzlaff today, and he says there was no such thing as a housing study. So if any of you remember what that might be, are we talking about the plan that was done, or was there some planning that was done? So anyone, I mean, was there something?
We talking about the Vanderwall study.
People on the staff, you, Mr. Krecklow.
Okay, well then you'd have to ask Steve what he's talking about.
Okay. he was referring to something that was part of planning. So, okay, all right. Well, I won't ask you again about that one.
Exchanged emails this afternoon.
Yeah.
There's no
Well,
study or report.
maybe it was called something else. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out what the heck it is.
Okay.
Okay, so the administrator was at the school district meeting this afternoon. He provided a financial overview of the TIDS, very similar to what was done at the joint review meetings. And he basically told them that the village intended to extend TIDS 7 and 8 out so that they wouldn't get their revenue as stated previously. So that was the conversation about the presentation that he had today with them. He also said there's possibility of more TIDS coming. He talked about TID 7 being extended 3 to 4 years, I think it was, and 8, 1.5 to 2 years, something like that, just so you know. The map on Tracy Cross, I think, probably should be amended. I don't know why Deansville is on here. I mean, I think those people would be shocked if they saw this. And you've got Holy Hill Gateway District, which is close to Woodside. You've got Lannon Road and County Line Road and Isabel Farms, and all of those are owed neighborhood meetings. So when are those neighborhood meetings going to occur? Do we have dates, plans? That keeps getting ignored, and people are getting more and more angry about that. I think you should reconsider that. Regarding MMSD, I agree with Commissioner I'm going to mispronounce your name, Leshevsky, thank you. We have MMSD Green Seams property behind us. They are not nice people at times. So I agree with you on that. And I'm a little scattered also. I disagree with government getting involved with real estate and providing subsidies. It generally creates a market distortion in real estate, and I think we can see that in certain projects that have occurred around town. One being the Grosnick property. That's seems to be such an appetite for purchasing that property that we're going to overpay by $400,000 approximately, maybe, unless they can renegotiate that. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance? Thank you.
I know, you know who I am, but W159 N105 on 405 Farm Road, Scott Heffley, Germantown, of course. Well, I will tell you, I'm disappointed that they had another discussion of Tracy Cross. I am on the Economic Development Commission. We had one joint meeting. We have another discussion. And my commission, it's not my commission, it's Trustee Peepers, was not invited to the meeting. Why aren't we not invited to give input? Okay, because this affects the village. Why? We talk about the school district. We have Kim Higginbotham, who was on my commission. She did not, we had no time to have any discussions. That meeting that was cut off short, it was only about, sorry, Mr. Shadid, there's only 10 minutes for you to listen to, 15 minutes. It wasn't taped or anything. So if we're gonna do this thing the right way, then the Economic Development Commission should be a part of this. I mean, we are looking in the very same things. We are interested in the very same things. Why are we not invited to the quote unquote party? I'd really like to know that. And I'm not Trustee Pieper, but she got to talk and you got to talk, and I raised my hand for 5 minutes twice and got to talk twice. No one other commissioners were allowed to talk because the meeting was cut short. If you have another meeting, I think that commission is deserved to be able to sit in on that and ask questions. You don't want to invite the community, and that's fine. Those are community members, and you know that, Trustee. You know that, Mr. Walters. Okay? I want to be involved in these things. These are discussions that are important. I'm a 30-year resident of the village. This is important to me. I'm not on that commission for my health. I'm here because I want to know what's going on with the village. And thank you for voting no, Mr. Leshevsky, for that DNR thing or the MMSD thing. That's going to be a hot mess, okay? You should have all your ducks in a row before you start agreeing to things with other regulatory entities. You don't go into discussion with the IRS without knowing what's going on in a good CPA. So thank you for voting no, but I guess we're going ahead. We'll see what happens there. The rest of the stuff, Tracy Cross report is rife with errors. I brought some up and the gentleman got very defensive with me when he was on the phone because he basically told me my math was wrong. You had former school board member Sarah Larson come up here and tell you the same thing. Apparently my math is always wrong, but it's really not. And I think it's very interesting that the things that were mentioned, the Tracy Cross report, creative financing, let's use some TIDs, which we don't do for residential apparently. That's what I was told. Asking the developers to lower their building costs by $30 a square foot, that's a complete joke. Trustee Baum knows that. You're not going to just give up $30 a square foot. That's their profit margins. So a lot of interesting stuff in that report. The final thing, Grosnick properties, the villages are buying, quote, are perfect for next-gen housing, and the space is large enough for 60 apartments. Interesting. How about we ask the citizens what they want? I've been asking for that for 2 years. Ask the citizens of Germantown what they want in their village. It's not our village or the small group here, it's everyone's village, right? We haven't asked them since 2019 before COVID, and we refuse to ask them again. And I don't know why. Just because we all live here, we're residents, it's great. How about the input of other residents? People that don't feel compelled to come to meetings like me and speak like me. Let's ask the people how they want Germantown to look in the future. And if you want to drop 300, 400, 500 unit, whatever it is, say it's 0.5 kids, that's 250 kids you're dropping in the schools, okay? Maybe the Economic Development Commission with Kim Higginbotham, newly appointed board member, maybe she'd want to know what's going on with that. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance? If there is no one else, does anyone else have any announcements they'd like to make? No announcements? Then we can be adjourned. Thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you all for watching. Have a good night. Thank you for filling out the slip. Appreciate it.
No.